All right, ETM Hotep. Peace. Welcome in peace. Welcome in peace. This is your brother Wujau, and I hope I can be heard. I want to say dua for those who are tuned in on this late Friday evening for our Freestyle Fridays. We started extremely late, later than we would normally do it, which will be about 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But here it is, almost 11:30 p.m. So this is how we do it. We still put in the work, still have a little fun. Anyway, it's late night. We don't have anything better to do, us nerds. So we're gonna have our Freestyle Friday and enjoy a little moment in time. So I want to show my appreciation to everyone. I'll give my appreciation to everyone. But let me pass the mic, and everyone else can introduce themselves, so I don't hog the mic all night. All right. Okay. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Kofi. Yeah, I didn't even see you pop in. Okay, go ahead. All mic's all yours. Okay, just had to make sure that I could be heard loud and clear, and I see that everyone said yes to you. So I want to apologize ahead of time for any technical difficulties that you may witness and that we may experience tonight using a different system to do this broadcast. But we didn't want to be without the broadcast, which is why we started late and on a different system. That's how dedicated we are. You all see that? We're dedicated. And we appreciate you all's dedication and tuning in. All right. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And most likely you all are already subscribed, because you probably wouldn't be here if you weren't subscribed and didn't get the notification. But make sure you share the link and encourage others to subscribe. Anybody that you feel that's interested in the Egyptian language, ancient Egyptian language, its culture, or any of the topics that you hear us talk about, then make sure you share this channel with them. And also our Facebook group, Sesh Medew Netcher Facebook group. All right. And okay, so with that said, we just going to jump into our freestyle. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with our Freestyle Fridays, it's what we do on Freestyle Fridays is that we take a random image of an ancient Egyptian text, whether we get it from online or someone emails it to us or post it in our Facebook group, and we use that picture to transliterate and translate the text that we see. But the difference is, for Freestyle Friday, we don't use any books. So we don't use a glyph list or sign list, and we don't use the dictionaries. So without the help of any of those tools, we do our best to try to transliterate and translate from what we already know and what we've already committed to memory, and what our skills within the language. And then at the end, anything that we may not know or miss, then we break out the books and we try to complete the translation. So we don't do anything too long, because we want to keep these videos bite size and under a certain time limit. So we don't do any long text. These are mainly stele or cropped portions of different text and things like that. All right. So it's nothing too long. We're not going to sit here and translate the entire, for example, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. All right. So don't expect that. But at the same time, we also encourage crowd participation or viewers participation. So we will be paying attention to the chat and may ask you all some questions. So make sure you keep up and stay stay with us. And there is a delay, so there's that awkward moment of silence periodically. So we try to keep talking during that moment of silence, but there is a lag, a few minutes latency going on, but we still get through it. All right, so we're just gonna jump into it now. Before we jump into it, I do want to say this. Recently, there's been quite a few live streams on different platforms and conversations dealing with the Egyptian text and what the ancient Egyptian people believed in, what they believed in, what they didn't believe in. And at the core of those conversations is an issue of figurative expressions versus literal expressions. What's literal versus what's figurative. And that's been a running problem in our communities, in a lot of these conversations for years and years. And it's not just with Egypt, it's with all quote unquote spiritual systems or religious traditions and holy texts and things like that, where people will read what's being called a religious text or whatever the case is, and then interpreting it literally, instead of possibly interpreting it figuratively, or realizing that they're reading figurative language or figurative expressions. Now, the big thing with that is that if you're reading literature that's written figuratively, then although you can read it and understand the language and you could break down the syntax and morphology of what you're reading, when it comes to semantics, when it comes to the meaning or the intended meaning, you have to do a whole lot more work to pierce and understand the intended meaning or the realities behind the figurative expressions. And so that is something that a lot of people don't do for whatever the reasons are. A lot of people don't do that. They may not have the time to do it or even the interest. But that is a huge thing in order to ascertain the real meaning or the realities behind this figurative speech. And so on both sides of the coin, we have people who subscribe to ancient Egyptian culture, and we got people who criticize those who claim to subscribe to ancient Egyptian culture. And on both sides of that argument, people are not trying to recover the realities behind the figurative expressions. And so for the critics, they're accusing people of really believing the text in which they read in a literal way. And then people who are practitioners may indeed interpret the text literally and try to practice or perform what they feel that they're reading. So it's been real messy in these conversations. It's recently, kind of gotten a little bit more popular in the conversations, but it's been going on for years. So I want to say that. And so what we're going to do, probably Monday, we're going to do a live stream on this channel. Make sure you mark your calendar. We're going to do a live stream on this channel Monday evening, where we're going to discuss figurative expressions and literal expressions, but we're going to demonstrate, we're going to show you in the Egyptian text where you can tell that these expressions are figurative and what's literal. Okay, so we're going to demonstrate that, and we're going to explain the different types of figurative expressions. By types, I mean we have different tropes, we have different metaphors, similes, hyperboles, personifications, etc., that are used all throughout the Egyptian text, and it's pretty much in every language around the world. We use it today, but we use it for slightly different reasons today than the people of antiquity. All right, and we're going to get into that when we do the presentation and have a nice discussion about that. So look forward to that on Monday. All right, so let me stop running my mouth and get straight into today's freestyle. So I believe Sonnet Emiket has the image for us for. Okay. Okay, so every. Oh, I'm sorry. All right. Can you all say something? Oh, okay. Okay. So let me sort this out very quickly. So that's that would be odd, eh, if everyone can just. So no wonder. Julanda said rapping over dead air. I should have picked up on that. When she said that. So let me sort this out. Give me one moment here. We're gonna work it out, you all. We're gonna work it out. And I tried to give a forewarning of any. Okay, let's see how we can work this out here. Um. Hmm. Yeah. Okay, you can share your screen. Yes, definitely. Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna sort out this audio. So you all bear with me. And in the meantime, I will get the screen up for the share. And so hopefully you all can see the image that we're going to be working on. Now I will start to try to work on this audio. So in the meantime, you all can check out the image and see what you all do with it. But I'm going to explain the steps as soon as I try to sort this out here. So if you all can bear with me for a minute. Okay, get it together. Get it together. Get it together here. All right, so let's see what can we do. Nope, can't do that. All right, we are going to. We're dead there like Jolanda and everybody else can. So hmm. All right, maybe if you all can speak.
Hotep, hotep. Let us know in the chat if you can hear me, or anybody else apart from Sebauja.
Okay, I believe everyone should be able to hear you now. Say something now.
Hotep, hotep, a
Yes,
bit.
everyone can hear you, and now everybody can see the screen, and we are back in business. See?
Okay, that's good. See, that's why I keep my greetings short.
Yeah, imagine
Yeah.
if everybody was had a long greeting and gave a whole spill, especially like MC Iron Lung. You all know the new title goes to Kofi Paisa, MC Iron Lung. He's the new MC Iron Lung. All right.
Yeah, Kofi gotta redo his greetings because that's been a while since we had it. So he's gonna have to reintroduce himself.
So I guess everybody has to reintroduce themselves. So again, this is your brother Wujao Meneb Eddie Ma'at, and I'm going to pass the mic over to the next person. One more time. Send your greetings again.
Hotep, a bit. This is Amy Cat, and welcome to Freestyle Friday.
ETM Hotel, Dua Dua Amin Ra, Kwai E Sekum, Rin E Kofi Paisai. We all like to welcome you all to the Sesh Ani Netcher YouTube channel.
All right. All right. One more.
ETM Hotel. Welcome in peace, everybody. It's your brother June. Just want to say thanks for tuning in. We appreciate the support. Welcome to another segment of Freestyle Friday, of course, where we encourage participation. I hope you guys enjoy the show and leave with satisfaction. Hotel.
All right. All right. So we have reintroduced ourselves, just as Juju just said. Okay. So I think we should be free of technical difficulties for now. All right. So everybody's watching the picture. So now, if you're unfamiliar with what we do, we're going to explain the steps to you. There are 4 steps to transliterations and translations. Step 1, as a matter of fact, I'll have someone else on the panel because I do a lot of talking. So I have someone else on the panel explain or at least list the 4 steps. Okay, so now that's not a technical difficulty, y'all. That's everybody keeping their mics muted and not saying anything. So I'm gonna give the 4 steps. Step 1 is to identify the direction in which you are supposed to read the glyphs. All right, so you're gonna determine the direction in which the glyphs are to be read. All right, and there are 2 directions and 2 orientations to choose from. Now you may hear people say 4 directions, but I found personally that can be confusing. You know, when I'm teaching the language and you say that, a lot of people have questions about that. So the better way of explaining it is 2 directions and 2 orientations. By 2 directions, I mean that you're going to read them either left to right or right to left. Simple. By 2 orientations means that they're going to be written in either columns or rows. Okay, so that's the first step. You have to determine the direction that you're going to read the glyphs. All right. Step 2 is you have to identify each individual glyph. So you have to be familiar with what each individual glyph is and what it represents and how it can function. And that's step 2. We call that the identifying step, the data collecting step. All right. For step 2, what you would normally use for the glyphs that you don't recognize, you would need the assistance of a glyph list or sign list. All right. And the sign list, the go-to sign list is Alan Gardner's sign list that everyone uses, where he cataloged all of the glyphs in the entire repertoire of the hieroglyphs of the writing system, and he grouped them based on their common themes. And so, for example, and he labeled them A through Z. So, for example, the category M, as in Mary, contains all the glyphs that deal with vegetation. So plants, trees, etc. Category D, as in dog, contains all the glyphs that deal with human body parts. Category G are all the glyphs that deal with birds. Okay, just to give you all an example. All right, so you may need a glyph list in order to help you out and to identify each individual glyph. So that's step 2. Step 3 is the pattern recognition step. And by pattern recognition, what you're doing is you're taking the individual glyphs and you're grouping them together to form the words that they are a part of. And that takes some skills and some knowledge that you would learn if you were to take, a beginner's course in learning the language and writing system. But what helps you out there would be glyphs that are function as what's called determinatives. All right, these are glyphs that usually 99% of the time they come at the end of a word, and they help you determine the meaning of the word. These particular glyphs that are called determinatives, they are mute, which means that they're not pronounced and they're not transliterated. They're there for your visual aid to help you determine the meaning of words. All right. And so that's what helps you separate one word from another. And once you have recognized the words, now you can take those words and look them up in the dictionary. So along with step 3, what you would normally use is a dictionary. All right. And you find the meanings of the individual words. Step 4, and the last step, is to apply the grammar. Because now that you have the individual words and you may have a good idea of what each individual word means, now you have to apply the grammar, which deals with syntax and morphology and the environment in which these words interplay with each other, and come away with a sensible translation. And then you're done. So that's step 1 through 4. Now for Freestyle Friday, of course, we don't go through all of those things because we're not even using the books at all. And then as far as for time and for what we do for freestyle, we kind of blend step 3 and step 4 at the same time. All right. So I got all of that out the way, and now we can jump straight on in. All right. And remember, we want participation from the chat. So I guess the first question, Emicat, are you able to zoom in just on the text now that everyone sees the full image? This is a Stella. And you see the image and the figures in there, but now we're just going to kind of zoom in on the text part that we're going to be dealing with. All right. So hopefully everyone can see that. That should be pretty big. I can see it very well. So, and I'm looking on the YouTube side, and it seems like it's pretty big. All right, good. All right, so let's throw an easy one out there to the viewers. What, as far as step one, so let's all do step one together. What direction should we read these glyphs? All right, and it's a bit, I'm gonna give you a hint, it's a bit tricky, but well, let's do it piece by piece. Let's see. Okay, let me ask this question. Remember, I said there are two directions, two orientations. In terms of all of these glyphs here, are these glyphs written in columns or are they written in rows? So I want you all to answer columns or rows in the chat. All right. And like I said, there is a delay. So, try to keep on talking during this lag time. But I want you to write columns or rows. All these glyphs that you see here, are they in columns or are they in rows? All right, and I'm checking out the chat. All right, Nisu Ray says columns, and I'm not gonna say if he's correct or not. Okay, we got, all right. Okay. All right. So we have 4 answers, columns, and that's correct. They're in columns. See, I can tell who watches our channel or who's been studying. That's good. So they're in columns. Now, what direction should we read these glyphs? Should we read them left to right or right to left for all of them, or is there a split? Do you all see a split? Explain it to us. Which way should we read them? Which way should we read them? Yes. Rapping over dead air. We do have an MC in the house, though. I'm not gonna point any elbows. We do have an MC in the house. MC. That's our. That's one of our secret weapons. Might have to pull them out of retirement. And they're probably hoping I don't say anything any further than what I just did. And if they unmute their mics and say something, then that's gonna give them away also. So, all right.
What
So
you
let's
need
see.
me to do?
Oh, okay. There you go, Kofi. We need you to spit 16 bars whenever we have like a little bit of dead air.
All right.
All right, so let's see these answers. So, okay. All right. June, you cheating. June giving away the answers.
That's why I'm asking. What is he doing?
No. I'm a student too. You learn right along.
Yeah, I'm saying June. I'm looking at the chat. I'm seeing June giving away the answers. But yeah, I see everybody pretty much gets it. It's split. It's evenly split. Yep, 3 and 3. Three columns that you're gonna read from left to right. And MBK, I think we can see your cursor. Or can we? Yeah. So we have 3 columns that we're gonna read from left to right. Which are those 3 columns on the right? Yep. And then there are 3 columns that we're gonna read from right to left, which are the 3 columns on the left.
I think, I don't know if maybe you're seeing it in different direction.
Huh?
What did you Sorry, what did you say again? Just so I move my cursor in the right.
Okay, there are the 3 columns on the left. Those are going to be read from right to left.
Gotcha.
Right. All right, so now that's all of step 1. So now for step 2, Now, here's the thing about step 2. In the learning process, when you learn this language and you learn about the writing system, by the time that you sit down and make attempts to transliterate and translate, there's quite a bit of information that you should already have under your belt. Okay. And for step 2, by this time you should have memorized what we call monoliterals. And the monoliterals are glyphs. They're 25 in number, and they're glyphs that represent one consonant. Hence the word mono in monoliteral, mono meaning one. Okay, so you should have those memorized at this point in time when you're trying to transliterate and translate. Okay, so for step 2, obviously you can skip the monoliterals because you should already know them. All right, so and actually for step 2, just in general, you're only going to be concerned with the glyphs that you don't recognize, because obviously the ones you recognize, you're already pretty much good to go with those. Okay, so step 2 may seem at the beginning stage, it may seem like a long thing because you don't know as many glyphs as you will eventually know as you practice and do this more often. All right, so skipping the monoliterals, let's identify some of the other glyphs anywhere in this text. So instead of waiting for the chat to do it, let's just go ahead. Those of us on the panel, let's just identify a few. Maybe we can identify maybe 5. So anybody can unmute and go for it.
I start since Nasiri, if I'm singing peace, brother, he jumped right into the 4th column. He said Osiris, Osar. So I give the I, the throne, the seated man.
Okay. And Emiket, if you could put your cursor there while he's doing that, saying that. Okay.
The I, his throne, and the seated deity behind the throne.
Okay. All right. So let me see what's a better way. Okay, let me just do this. Well, no. You're right. So let's identify a few more. So you identified 3. So let's identify a few more.
Okay, the wind bird behind on the other column. The quail chick.
Sorry, what column?
The 4th column. I mean the 5th column. I'm sorry, the 5th column. The hare. The quail chick. The stroke. The horn. What's that? The horn viper. The is that the egg? I can't remember exactly what it's called, but I always call it the egg. The single stroke behind it. The reed leaf. I can't make out that. Is that the bread? I don't know what I can't make out that in between it. Is that the bread loaf? Nah, that can't be the bread loaf. I don't know what that is. I can't make that out right there.
Okay. Somebody can help him out?
I'm not sure what it is. If it's the ear.
I definitely can't make it out. And it's connected to the rope. Look like it's connected to the rope, but I can't tell what that is.
Okay. Is your cursor there? I'm trying to figure out where you are. I see. Now, okay, mind you, see, this is something that we all have to now listen. When you're doing transliterations and translations, one thing you always gonna have to keep in mind is to be flexible and to be open. All right, and that's because a lot of these artifacts are very old, as you know. They're like thousands of years old, hundreds of years old, thousands of years old. And although they're in museums and things, and they may look nice and pretty, but some of them will be damaged and slightly damaged, chipped away and things like that. So sometimes it can obscure your view in trying to determine, what these glyphs are and things like that.
I got it.
Okay, go ahead, June.
It's the arm. Is that a combination glyph with the arm and the twisted flags?
Do you mean this is like this here?
No, that's the hand. I'm talking about IAH. The arm transliterated small a.
Oh, where are we? Am I on the right spot?
Yeah, you're in the right spot.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's what it looks like. But I think with that little bit of damage, we can't see on the other side of the twisted flags, the arm coming up.
Oh, right. Okay, I see what you mean. So it could be the arm going all the way here.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right, so it looks like you all got it. Anything else?
We have
a popular one that we saw a lot, especially with the Kemet issue, is in the far left column, the Medew symbol.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have that.
Last symbol in that column.
Yeah, and we have a column here. Oh, pillar.
Yes.
As well, and yeah, we have that one that everybody knows. That's a triliteral hotep. And I think that's about it.
All right. So that would be step 2. So those are examples of how you do step 2. So, but you would in step 2, you would have to identify every single glyph. All right. And again, some of the glyphs you will already know. Obviously, the monoliterals you would know by default at this point. But even as you start to do this more often in practice, you're going to start recognizing, memorizing more glyphs. What we refer to as biliterals, triliterals, quadriliterals, and even ones that represent 5 consonants. All right. And that's what those glyphs represent. Okay. So that's what you would do. Now, what you would do with that information is you would write down how these glyphs are transliterated. So what we did not say, what we should say, is how the glyphs are transliterated. So, for example, the 2 glyphs on the leftmost column, the 2 top glyphs there, if you put your cursor over there, right, each one of those is transliterated as T, capital A, Ta. Okay, and there's 2 of them, so that's a dual.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so what's key to step 2 is that in the process of identifying it, you would transliterate it. This is where you get your transliterations for the individual glyphs. All right, during step 2. All right, and so you would do that. So in the 3rd column from the left, we have the what looks like a pyramid. That's transliterated as a biliteral D-I, D. Okay, and so that's what you would do for step 2. All right, so now we can move forward to step 3. So remember, step 3 is a pattern recognition step, and it's something that we do all the time, and even in English. Now, when you first come across these glyphs, if you haven't taken any lessons or course, or you haven't been studying the language or anything, when you first see these, they look very pretty. They look beautiful. It's like beautiful art. The glyphs are carved. They're real nice and everything. And when you try to read them, or if you realize that it's a writing system, in your mind, you're going to look at individual glyphs, and you're not going to be able to make heads or tails of it outside of what they're images of. And so, but what happens is the more and more you practice this, instead of seeing individual glyphs, you're going to start seeing groups of glyphs that make up words. No different than English. So, if you just look at any given English sentence, just look at any English sentence or English word. When you look at a word in English, because you know English, you're not really looking at each individual character in the word. you're looking at the word as a whole. Now in English, it's easy for us because we put spaces in between each of our words, so it's easier for us. But I guarantee you, and we've shown and demonstrated this in our book. But even if you were to remove the spaces out of any given English sentence, most English speakers can still read the sentence because your mind is trained to look at patterns of words, not the individual characters. So I say all of that to say is that the same thing will happen to you when you learn this particular writing system and language and practice. Okay, so just want to put that out there. So that's what step 3 is about: pattern recognition, recognizing words. So let's go through a couple of words for everybody. Yeah.
But there are spaces, right? We dealing with the classifier, right? That's how you can determine. Well, I'm just saying that for the listening audience, determine where it ends at, where the word ends at. You were saying it was all running together.
Yeah. No literal space, like no spaces.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I said that earlier, that determinatives are the glyphs that help you, that will help you on how to parse one word from another. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Ooh. All right. So let's identify some words that we see here. So let's group some glyphs together and identify some words. So we're gonna start. Well, actually, let's ask the chat first. So I want anybody in the chat. I want you all to identify some words, any words that you see, and I think some people are doing that already. I see Brother Christopher Withers has one word called iun. And so, Emicat, I don't know if you want to square that off. Okay. That's a word, iun, which is the pillar and what we call the nubo. And then we have the village determinative, village or city determinative, as most people know it as. So those 3 glyphs create that word iun or iunu. And well, I'll deal with it. Well, iunu is that word, but a lot of people translate it or spell it out as anu, ANU. And we'll talk about that a little later. All right. So any other words?
I see somebody going for full phrases. That's good.
What happened, Senate?
Oh, I was saying that's good on the chat. We have people going for full phrases, like his words.
Yeah, I see Omar. Read. Peace, Omar.
One that combination of glyphs that jumps out to me that we see a lot. It's in the 4th column, almost to the bottom. We have the reed leaf, min, biliteral min, and then another complement, water ripple in. Those 3 make amen.
Okay, that's amen. Sister Lisa identified wasir, so you can highlight that one. Yep. So those 3 glyphs make up wasir. Most people know as Osiris. Omar Reed gave us a whole phrase, like you were saying, Hotep di Nasu, so you can. Yep. Hotep di Nasu, right there. Those 5 glyphs there. All right. Let's see. Anybody else?
I think, yeah. Somebody said nen, so that'd be that.
Omar Reed has Tawi.
So Omar Reed has that part.
I think Omar Reed is cheating. I don't know. I don't
He's good.
I don't believe he's getting this on his own.
So.
Neb.
Oh yeah, down here.
All right, we have Neb.
Yeah, and just a note, we have the transliteration methods that we use. When you type, we have case sensitive, which would be the manual decodage. So if it's, that was for Omar Reed. So if it's Ty, it would be T and the uppercase A. Just like you see Christopher Withers have typed. So just make a note of that.
Why?
Yeah, see, Omar Reed showing out. See, now he's doing a little too much incarnate. Where's the car?
When?
Okay, Sinet Lisa says, isn't it Neb Tawi? That's kind of true, but the transliteration is a little off there. The brother Christopher Withers has the correct transliteration. And so as Emicat said, there's two main transliteration systems that we use. All right, and they're very precise. Okay, and it differs from the Egyptological spelling. So for example, you may see the word Medew in the word Netcher. You may see some people spell it out as MEDU for Medew, and then NETR for Netcher. They say Medew Netter or whatever. So there's different variations that people spell it, and so it can get pretty much widespread with that, and a lot of differences. But when it comes to transliterations, we use the strict two of the main strict systems, which is manual decodage, which is case sensitive, and then we have a diacritic method. So on digital media and social media, we don't use the diacritic because then you have to set up your keyboard and have the dots and all the small markings above and below the letters. So instead, manual decodage was created to alleviate that. So it's case sensitive. So when you see a capital letter in the way that we transliterate it, it's not an error. It's put that way for a reason. So Christopher Withers has Tawi. The A in Tawi is capitalized. So it's Ta, and then we would be the dual ending. Two lands, Tawi. Okay, so everyone keep that in mind who's listening in. Let's see. Yeah, Omar Reed says he's been watching the freestyles. Yeah, we got to get you in the class, Omar. We got to get you in the class. We're starting a class group this month. So before we end the show, I'll make sure we give the details out. We need everybody. Everybody's interested in this and getting these classes. All right. And so we're going to talk about it more. So let's go ahead and finish some more. So anybody want to identify anything else? Kind of identified pretty much everything, didn't we? Between what everyone was saying.
Yes. St. Chris also identified Itemu, which would be Temu, this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess what hasn't been noted there is Rahaketi.
Betty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much everybody just knocked it out.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, so that's an example of step 3. Okay, so remember, step 3, you are identifying words. So you're parsing these individual glyphs into groups that they make up words. Okay. And now you can take these words and look them up in a dictionary, but of course on freestyle we don't do that. So we have to go from memory. So let's this is where we're gonna combine step 3 and 4 together. Remember, step 4 is when you apply the grammar full stop, and come away with a sensible translation. But because we're doing freestyle, we have to combine step 3 and 4 a bit. We have to merge those two steps. So let's go ahead and have at it. Let's ask the chat first, because the chat comes first. So at this point, anybody in the chat outside of Christopher Withers, let me bar people from commenting first. So Christopher Withers, you can't participate. Let's see, anybody else, and then you all, anybody on the Sesh you already, don't participate just yet. So let's ask anybody in the chat. I want you to come away with any translation of any part of this as you can. Now, I know some of you all already gave Hotep di Nasu, but that's the transliteration and the way that we conventionally pronounce it. But I want you to start translating it. Bring it on into English. All right, bring it on into English. All right, so, and again, there's a little lag here, so I want anybody in the chat to bring any part of this into English outside of Chris. All right, so okay, so while we're waiting for to see that in the chat, I want to reiterate. So Monday, look forward to us going live Monday evening. We're going to talk about figurative expressions and literal expressions. Now, we had a show before already, but we just kind of touched on the subject as an open discussion. But this time we're going to go in and explain it, and we're going to demonstrate in the Egyptian language and in Egyptian text how a lot of these texts are inundated with figurative expressions, and it's going to reveal and confirm the fact that what we always say, that Egypt as a topic of study or a topic of discussion is not to be played with. It's something that you cannot microwave and just passively or surfacely or shallowly talk about. And unfortunately, that's what goes on a lot of times, and people really, really, really miss the benefits of really engaging the culture. Okay, so it's a lot of time and man hours and things put into really studying the Egyptian culture, and there's a reason for that. One of the main obvious reasons is because the culture is dead and the language is dead. So it's not like we can knock on our next door neighbor's door and speak Egyptian to them or live the culture, here in America and so on and so forth. All right. So.
I think, was it Jagar Davies was asking, he doesn't know where to read from. So maybe if I show that we're reading this part, I think this is part, isn't it? This section here we're starting with. I think that's what most people have started with.
Okay. Well, my question to the chat was if anybody can give any English of any part of it.
Okay.
All right. And Jagad may have come late, but we had went over the direction, in which these glyphs are to be read and things like that. So you may have to rewind, check out the video in the archive when we're done. So do you all see any translations yet?
Yes, we see translation starting from an offering the king gives.
All right, Senate Lisa, the first one I see is
Nusiri on the top.
Oh, at the top, yep. An offering the king gives. Okay, and that's that from left from to identify, because we normally we would put numbers above the column so that everyone can follow which column we're talking about. But the third column from the left is where you're going to start reading from for those three columns. The leftmost column, the next column over, and the next column over. So the first three columns from the left are to be read together. Okay, we got an arrow there. Good.
Let's make it maybe that blue. Oh. Okay. Back to that.
Okay, that's
I don't know
good.
why it's so huge. But yeah, but we're starting from here.
With the spirit.
Yeah. All right, good. So we're starting there. And Nisu Ray is correct. An offering that the king gives. All right. And then he said to Ra. And Son Elisa says words spoken by Rakti, Lord of the Two Lands. All right. Omari says an offering the king gives Osar.
Wow.
And then he says the two lands. And so far that's what we have. All right, so let's work with what they said so far, and let's see if there's anything we need to patch up a bit. Okay, so going back to Nisu Ray, he says an offering the king gives. That's correct. So that's where that blue arrow is. Okay, and it says two. We have Hotep di Nasu in two, and then we have the deity. So Nisu Ray says this deity is Ra, and
Ra Keti.
And Lisa says it's Rakti. But what is the deity's name?
Raketi.
Okay.
I think that's what she was trying to say. She probably just misspelled it.
T.
Ra Horakitsu.
There you go. Ra Heru Aketi. And most people say Rahar Aketi or Ra Harakti all together. They say Ra Harakti, Ra Har Aketi, or Ra Heru Aketi. All right. Under that.
I think.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Under that, what do we have?
In?
No, under Ra Haraketi.
Timnip.
Yep.
Timu, yeah.
So it's Timu. Now, what we see is Tim or Timu, but we are familiar with this abbreviated form of Atum.
Yeah.
Okay, for everyone know that's listening, Atum. And then, so Kofi, you can finish it out. What's after that?
Yeah, Lord. Then you have Lord. Then you have the two lands.
Yep.
Here, which is plural. You got Tawi, Lord of the two lands in New.
All right. So now most people know the place called Inu or Anu as Heliopolis. All right. So let's kind of polish it up a bit. So we have Hotep di Nasu, En Ra Har Aketi, Atum, Neb Tawi, Enu. And an offering the king gives to Ra Har Aketi, Atum, Lord of the Two Lands, and Heliopolis. All right.
And that is the city of Ra.
Yeah, they say the city of the sun or of Ra. Okay, Heliopolis. Yep. Okay, so let's go to the other three on the other side. Okay. So let's start with this column. Everybody in the chat. Oh, let me answer this question while we wait for the chat. Anybody in chat, let's try to do these other three columns. But in the meantime, Nisu Ray asked the question. He said, that's the Netcher I said last night. That was Ra Haraketi, but I was told it was Ra. So I'm a bit confused on the difference. The reason why is because the deity last night was Ra. This deity is Ra Haraketi. The difference is that you see the two strokes, the two strips of land behind the falcon bird here. That spells the word Aketi. Those were not in the glyphs on the deity last night. So hopefully that clarifies for you. And there was also no falcon in the glyphs. It was just the mouth and the arm and the sun disk. So that was just the deity Ra.
Also, we said the name, but if you took it like the literal translation, we talk about that. It's like Ra, Ra of the two horizons, or something. That Aketi is horizons, and it's two of them.
Well, Aketi is a Nisbi.
It could be, or Nisbi. I was gonna say it could be also Nisbi.
Okay, break it down. Yep, there you go. Break it down.
Oh, it could be also a Nisbi, which sometimes gets confused with dual, like the number dual, where you have the ty, like or the y ending, like we have in Tawi. But it is a Nisbi, and the Nisbi will show that it is related to the something that is related to the horizon.
Mm-hmm. So it's he who pertains to the horizon.
Precisely.
Or he who relates to the horizon. Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting because we it's interesting because usually when we see it, it's like that with the two strips instead of the dual stroke.
Exactly, and a lot of times, the writing of a dual and Nisbi can get confused. Yep. They become false duals. Same thing with Niuti, which is a word for local, a commoner, local, but some people may think it says two cities. All right. So now I'm looking for anybody that is sharing. So I think people are kind of stuck in the chat, unless my chat froze.
Nah, nobody said anything about the second part.
Okay, we got Sean in the house. All right.
Yeah, you can take the last part, those 3 columns.
Yeah, Sean, since you came late, you gotta do the final 3. Nah.
Man, I've been saying words, y'all been highlighting them. That was me talking.
When were you talking? You must have been muted.
He said a few things. He said when. He said wab.
Okay.
Nin.
Atun.
Okay.
Yeah.
I probably thought it was June because I couldn't see.
It was the figurative Sean.
The
It's not the little one.
Yeah, it's the figurative Sean. It's the Sean out there doing field work. Okay.
Adorations to Asar, serious and adorations to Asar, or an offering to Asar.
Well, let's answer this question. J
God.
God asks, is each symbol a sentence or letter or number? No. And that would take a little bit of time to explain, but just briefly, each symbol is a pictograph. Each symbol represents a picture of something, but that's what the hieroglyphs are, or what the Sesh are. Now, how they function are different. They can function in one of 3 ways in any given instance in which it's used. One way is as a logograph, which means that a glyph can represent a word, or a glyph can represent a sound, and we call that phonographs, or a glyph can represent a help determine the meaning of words. All right, and usually come at the end, and those are called determinatives. All right, so it's best to understand it that way instead of the way in which you ask, as if a symbol being a letter or a number. Okay, so just keep that in mind, and you know, hopefully you'll watch our archives and keep watching us, and you'll become more familiar with what I'm saying. All right. Okay, but I don't see much on on here, and I don't want to stretch this out too long. So let's go ahead and do it. So everybody on the panel, let's just go ahead and dive in on this. So we're on the 3 columns to the right, starting with where the blue arrow is. So what's this first column saying?
Sir Wabin, Amen, Nin.
Okay.
I'm letting the chat respond. Hold on, let me type it.
Now we're gonna translate it though, because you gave the
Oh, and Chris Withers can also participate now.
He done went mute in the chat.
All right, we got a little bit. It's a little lag, so we're trying to see. Okay, Sean typed it in. Sean, you must have typed it from your phone.
Looks like.
If you didn't, shame on you, because that W should be lowercase.
Yep.
All right, so we have Wasir, Wab, Ni, Amun, Nin so far.
And he had the one.
We have Win, F. Then we have Sa. Then we have Ya. Then we have a determinative, which is likely the person's name, and that's signifying that. And then we have Ni again. And then we have Jed. And that next glyph is going to be give us a little bit of trouble. But we know the last glyph is going to be Unk. So Jed. And then you probably have to zoom in to see what that glyph is. That next glyph right there.
Okay, let me delete that one out. It looks like a jug.
Okay.
Is it for the milk? No, not for the milk.
If that's an oil jug, you talking about an oil jug?
Yeah, merit. Something like that.
It's either Mir, the oil jug, or Basti. It would be Basti Unk. So Jed Basti Unk would be that column.
Okay.
All right, so kind of zoom back out again. Let's kind of put some more. Let's smooth it out a bit. So we have Wasir Wab Ni, Amin Nin Win F, Saya Ni Jed Besti Unk.
Okay.
All right, so what is all that saying? So anybody in chat, what is all that saying? Let's translate it to English. Let's get it in. Okay, Chris has Wasir Abu in Amen. It's Wab. The purification priest of Amun. So let's go ahead. So this is the Osiris. Now you can kind of scroll zoom out so we can see the whole picture, so we can see the figure, because obviously, and this is something we need to point out, so you can zoom back out again. Okay, now that we can see more of this picture, we can see why the glyphs are facing in different directions. So the glyphs, the 3 columns on the right, the glyphs are facing to the left. The 3 columns on the left, those glyphs are facing to the right. Okay, and so the 3 columns on the left where the glyphs are facing to the right, those glyphs go with the deity sitting there, the enthroned deity sitting there. The glyphs facing to the left, in front of and above the head of that figure, those glyphs go with that. They're related. So this person here, it must be Saya as a person. So in English, it would be the Osiris, the purification priest of Amun. And then Nin is a negative word, Nin. So not. And then when with that bird, that particular bird is for disagreeableness. So it would be not faulted of him, F, and then Saya. And then of, and then another person's name, likely. Jed Besti Unk. And that's it. Unless there's something below that. Is anything under them?
What you go back?
Okay, no.
Say what you said. What now? After knee, at the where you get the hair book, the rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
You said it was what was the translation right there? Yeah.
Fault.
Fault.
Yeah, or blame. Fault or blame.
So it's not faulted. So this is a different way of saying, like, usually we see on the other stele where you see vindicated Mercury. So this is a different way we could pretty much say the same thing. Is that so?
That's a good point. Yes, because when we say Makeru, we're saying that you are triumph or you are vindicated, and you're saying that you have no fault or no blame, meaning that you have passed, you have been tried and you've been proven. And so that's coming from the judgment scene after you have been judged and you come out victorious. Somebody got to mute their mic. After you come out victorious, they say that you are triumphant or makeru, but in this case, you have no fault. Same thing.
Okay. Do.
When you zoomed out, people probably can get a better look at why that's the deity that was named on the left-hand side of the stele, because he's sitting right there with the Wa scepter and what is that? The lotus flower. Somebody called lilies.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Oh, hold on, you can't hear me. No, I was saying, if you can hear me, I was saying they get a better view of the deity on the left-hand side of the stele that was actually in the translation, because if they look at it from this particular view, it probably still would have been harder to kind of like get into the glyphs or look at them, but they could see who was actually being spoken of.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna read. I don't know if you mean good point. So they say that it makes sense because he's holding his heart. So this person is holding a heart. So does that have anything to do with him being free of blame, fault, vindicated?
Yes, when you start seeing text about the heart, you see a lot of different text, especially in the so-called Book of the Dead. You'll see chapters that deal with the heart, the protection of the heart, the blamelessness of the heart, and the fact that the heart does not speak against the individual. Now, again, Monday, we're going to talk about this figurative expressions versus literal expressions. So everything I just said is not literal. No one is going to be holding their heart in their hand. Even today, when we even say that, when we say, we'll say that as a gesture of vulnerability and and out of adoration or love for someone, when we say, man, I wear my heart on my shoulders, or I have my heart in my hand, I give my heart to you, which means that you're opening yourself wide open to be vulnerable, which means that you are naked. You are exposing what? Not your heart, literally, but the essence of you, which is what the word ib means, the essence of you. And the ancient Egyptians saw as the essence of the human being. Today, we call that the mind. So what you're doing is you are giving someone your mind. You're opening up. And, even in relationships, people say, man, especially if one person in a relationship has had previous bad relationships or has been cheated on, they're going to kind of be guarded. They're going to guard their feelings. And so they're not going to open up. And so when you say, I got my heart in my hand, or I give you my heart, or I'm going to let you in my heart, all those are figurative expressions to really just tell somebody that, hey, I am just going to be wide open, transparent, vulnerable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, but anyway, Monday we're going to talk more about figurative expressions versus literal expressions. All right. So, but anyway, that concludes this particular picture. And so that's, you had something? Oh, and so that's how we do Freestyle Friday. And then, so now we would take this and we wouldn't just conclude here. We would crack open the books and then double and triple check behind ourselves just to kind of make sure that we are right, and things. But I encourage everyone who's learning the language as a beginner or what have you, to also do this with yourself. Start collecting pictures and, keep your books closed, keep the gardener list and sign list and glyph list and the dictionaries closed, and just try to see what you can come up with and identify using the skills and tools that you have. Sean, you had something? Sean. Okay. What was I saying? Yeah, you utilize the tools and things that you've learned and then put them to the test. You want to test yourself and have fun with it. So that's why we do it as a group, and we refer to it as Freestyle Friday. But make sure you keep it up and do this. So for now, if anybody has any questions in the chat, we can just have an open discussion and maybe answer some questions that people may have related to what we just did, or the language in general, or even the culture. Or if you heard some recent conversations about the Egyptians, what the Egyptians believe, whether they believe this literally or not, and things like that. So if you have any of those questions, we can spend a little bit of time and go over those real quick. So I don't want to be dead air. So anybody on the panel, if you all have any comments or anything to share. So Emicat, keep that up for a second. Let me ask you this. Where? Oh, no, that wasn't that one. It was June. You had shared a 3D thing, but yeah, we probably won't be able to see it that well. I was going to see if we could share that. All right. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, but I don't know if we can. I don't know. Maybe you can try.
I put the links in our chat.
What do you want me to share that?
If you can, if it comes up right. So if you can
Okay.
share that.
That's
one.
right.
All right. But yeah, in the meantime, if anybody has any questions, feel free. Matter of fact, I think we should just go ahead and post a link, get everybody in here, because I want to get people used to speaking. We we're not all we're not going to bite, or we're not going to be about any disrespect or anything like that. We got to start communicating again. So I'm going to put the link once I get over here. MK, I think you have to stop sharing that one and then pull up the other one. Oh, okay. So I'm gonna post a link inside the chat. Hopefully, if I can. And yeah, you all are more than welcome to come and join us for a while. And we don't want to stay on here too long. But we're gonna see if we can post it. Yeah, this silence, boy. I really do not like that. And so
You post a link,
I'm about to post it right now. Yep.
or you want me to post?
Oh, if you can do it, that's fine. I'm doing it as well, so it doesn't hurt. Doesn't hurt. So I'm posting a link now. We'll spend a little bit of time if anybody want to jump on.
Okay, I was trying to post to share, but I think I might be having some issues again. So.
All right, no problem, no worries. So we posted the link.
Thing we could share too. How many people we got in the chat? 3,400. Oh, I see something.
1,000. Somebody just joined. Who is it?
Okay, so do we have it up?
Yeah. Can you see?
Yes. All right.
Okay.
Okay, so what we're sharing now is, I guess June, you can explain it.
Yeah, earlier today it's raining out here in Seattle, so I was sitting at home and decided to do some field work. Got online and found a virtual tour to the Metropolitan Museum, and I think it's in Manhattan in New York.
Okay.
I'm not sure the borough. I think it's Manhattan, but it's the Metropolitan Museum in New York. And I think that's the hall right there where you enter into the Old Kingdom section. No, you gotta go through the hallway right there if you can.
It should be labeled on top. I think it's labeled on top. If you go to the right. Go back to the right. Now go up, point up.
I think you had.
There it is, right there. So we see that is a room dealing with the Old Kingdom. So this is good field work. June, it's nice that you could be in the comfort of your own home and do field work in the museum.
Well, yeah. It's 2020. It's 2020.
Iker.
Remote field work. That's good.
Right. So that's great. So because I was enlightened that going to a museum is doing field work. So now that they have museums, now these 360 tours in museums are becoming more and more popular, and even in Egypt, the museum, certain areas of the Cairo Museum over in Egypt today, they've released 360 video or 360 capabilities like this, where you can actually travel, and it's very, very clear. Like you can actually zoom in on the text to be able to read them.
Man, I spent hours in there one day.
Right. So
I'll try and find the site for that again. But yeah, I spent hours in there walking around. This one allows you to go to 2 floors. But it indicates if you can, when the arrow pops up, you can push on the arrow and it should let you walk through. I don't know, when you're moving your mouse around and the little arrows pop up. Right there, yeah. If you can, push on that arrow.
Okay, like that.
Yeah, and it lets you walk in there.
Okay.
Hey man, I got some field work right here too. Look, I'm taking the wrap off of it, fresh from Cairo.
Oh, a
Field work.
A DVD of the museum, right?
Yeah, DVD of the Cairo Museum.
Wow.
Oh, wow, that's nice.
That's
240 minutes.
That's interesting that you can be in the comfort of your room and do field work.
you know, you don't have to worry about closing time.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about closing time. You don't have to worry about people getting in your way of snapping pictures or any noise and stuff. That's great, and you can save
I'm
money.
gonna.
You how much it costs about what just take a trip over there, man. That's
Yeah,
excellent.
this is
Excellent.
fresh from the museum, and I got some
Speaking
pictures.
speaking of cost, um, the virtual tours and online tours is not the only museums I go to. I visited a museum out here in Seattle a few times, and I just throw this out there. Um, when I go to the museums, I don't pay full admission. Um, I don't come at them as a disrespectful way, but I feel my and our ancestors' artifacts are inside of there. We shouldn't have to pay to see them. So what I do is I tell them I'm entering on donations, and they have no problem with that. I've never paid full price to enter a museum. So I don't know. You guys can try it out. If you
Okay.
do decide, yeah, if you do visit a museum, ask them if they have an entry by donation. It's
Nice.
just crazy that we got to pay to see our ancestor stuff.
That's nice. But I'm amazed that you can actually do field work in the comfort of your own home by this new technology that we have now of these 3D virtual tours of the museums. So wow. So yeah. So now I can say I've been to the Met Museum. Wow, that's great. All right. All right. All right. We're doing field work. Good. Okay.
Right. We do that actually a lot on Fridays because if you notice, a lot of the Freestyle Fridays, we pretty much just knock out most of those artifacts. You know, like we just get random stuff from the museums. A lot of them come from the Met, but you know,
Right.
Yeah.
I
the
think that
British Museum. So Freestyle Fridays always digging up stuff. You know, getting dirty.
the, the piece we were working on earlier, isn't that from the Met?
Yep.
Yep.
So wow, we're doing field work.
Mm-hmm.
Sean, if you don't mind,
Yes.
if you could repost the link because I don't. We are at the 85-minute mark. We'll stay on here, hang out for a little while. Also, make sure everybody get it. Oh, you've been posting it. Okay, good. So yeah, anybody's welcome to come in. You know, we're gonna open up for the discussion. We've been through our Freestyle Friday. I think we have another person that's coming already, and
Yeah,
that is brother
my DVDs got
Chavis.
300 photographs.
So Chavis, you could tell us how to say it. Is it Chav? Is it Chavis or Chases? Yeah, I can hear you. You sound a little muffled, but we can hear you.
Oh, I think it's because of the headphone. Hold on, let me take the Bluetooth off.
You sound like you're underwater.
You can hear me now?
Oh, there you go. Much better. Much better.
It's Chavis.
Okay, Chavis. All right. See, there we go. Now we
Chavis.
got it. We got it, Chavis. Chavis.
Yeah.
All right. I'll
I
probably
was
forget it.
wondering. I was watching Garfield today, and I seen Dr. Mott on there. I was trying to see, did y'all ever like break down that the thing with I think it's Jehuti Hotel where they moving the stuff the sled across the sand or whatever.
Oh yeah, we actually did a video on that. I believe. Matter of fact, there's a post on our website, seshmedwnetcher.com, where we talk about how they move large statues and large stones by the sled method and how they use sand and they used to pour a certain amount of liquid on the sand to create that slick surface.
Tyree, mute your mic. Hold on, Doc. Say, mute your mic, Tyree. There's feedback coming from
My bad, I had the water on too. My bad, I'm washing dishes.
No, it's another one. Tyree.
Oh, okay, I see. But yeah, to answer your question though, there's a post on the seshmedwnetcher.com, one of our articles, and we just show how these large stones and statues were dragged on the sledge. And
I seen some Sesh on there. I was like, y'all broke that down?
yeah, we actually translated because it actually tells you that they pour water. They pour water in front of the sled.
Right.
Yep.
So I'm gonna have to check that out. Right. Then I heard her say that y'all was supposed to be I don't know how old that video was, but she was saying y'all supposed to be breaking down, I think, the rhyme papyrus and making sure everything was right and exact on that. Y'all still doing that too? That probably, I know, probably
That's probably an
a
older.
long way ahead.
Well, no, that's probably an older video, maybe, but the Ryan's mathematical papyrus you talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we've done that too. So we have videos. Now we didn't do the whole papyrus, but we did the beginning. And I think what she was talking about was that we were going to take some of the equations or problems and actually go over them and solve them. So
She was saying like y'all gonna try to like make a book. You know, I thought that was a good idea to make a publication out of that.
Yeah, that would be good.
I was asking though, like y'all still planning on doing that?
Yeah, we're gonna get together probably. Definitely. Right now, my priority is to get this grammar book out by April.
I'm looking forward to that because I stay. I got all y'all stuff, man.
All right, appreciate it, man. Yeah, gotta get you in the class. Gotta get you in the class. Get you in the class.
I'm working on that. It's only a matter of time. I'm trying to get it together.
I see a Marquise kid asks, does the Zoom link work with a cell phone? And the answer is yes.
That's how I'm on it.
Yeah, he's on his phone. Oh, there's an echo. I think Chavis. I said Chavis. Is it Chavis? See, I'm gonna forget that.
Yeah, it's Chavis.
Okay, yeah, Chavis. You probably have to mute.
All right.
Okay. Let's see if that stopped it. Yeah, that was him. So yeah, the Zoom link works on the cell phone, and yeah, the echo stopped. All right, cool. So, but the floor is open. I guess MBK, you could stop sharing. Yeah.
Joe.
Yep.
Hey, how you doing, man?
All right. Good. I'm doing good. I don't know who this.
Good.
I can't see who this is. Wait a minute. One second.
This is Tyree. I'm from Ediston Island, South Carolina.
Okay. Peace.
Right.
T. Hotel.
But a question for your hotel. Question. Rob Vaughn was talking about the deceased, and that's the kind of main word he's using. For this whole thing. Can you give an example of a deceased, meaning something, and then give an example of a deceased meaning something else?
Oh, the deceased.
As far as in the glyphs, how they want to just say it's about, the dead, can you give some examples of that? Of them using the word deceased, and it means one thing here, and then it means another thing there.
Oh, I think I see what you're saying. Well, here's the thing. What they're calling the deceased person is wasir. And so, like, for example, there are many words that has been translated as deceased. And this is something that people got to understand. And this is why I'm going to say it until I'm blue in the face or until the wheels fall off. That Egypt cannot be microwaved. And so what we have to understand, those of us who study the language and spend a lot of time with it, we understand that the translation is an art and a science. And so there's rarely a one-for-one translation when you're moving meaning from a source language into a target language. So there's a lot of room for discretion and prerogative for people to do, because the grammar of Middle Egyptian does not match the grammar of English. And so when we're translating full text, there's a lot of room to play with a bit. And even in single words, there's rarely a one-for-one swap. Okay, so I just want to make sure that's clear for everybody. And I always give the example of Kiswahili. The word nitasema is one word in Kiswahili, but in English, we got to translate that one single word into 3 English words. And what are those words, Emikat?
Sorry, nitasema means I will speak.
Okay, so in English, we got to bring that one Swahili word, nitasema, into English as I will speak, which is 3 words. The first person pronoun, the verb, combination, will speak. I will speak in the future tense. Okay, now having said that, when I'm asked questions like that, as far as deceased and stuff, you have to remember we're dealing with translations. And so there are many words that have been translated as deceased. So, for example, and obviously I'm coming off the cuff with this answer, so we can kind of go in the future. We can go in on this topic, which I don't mind. But like, for example, there's a word tepi, and someone else is sharing their screen. Give me a second, y'all. Yeah, because my screen does I'm trying to make sure that we still broadcasting over here. Somebody share the screen, because I told you I'm using a different way of doing this live this time. So I apologize. Technical. Can you all still see the screen and hear me?
Two.
Okay. All right. Where was I? Okay, so I can give you a few examples of words, Egyptian words that are translated as deceased, or a deceased person, whatever. So we have a word tepi shi, which literally means those who are at the top of the sea. That's translated as deceased. All right. So what does that really mean, though? And so that's where it comes into play, where we're dealing with a figurative expression, and we have to go beyond the figurative expression to unveil or recover the reality behind it. And that's a whole entire process. Okay. Then we have a word for deceased, which is nefer, which most people know is the word good or beautiful. So nefer is a word for the deceased. Okay, that's another one. And also neferet, the feminine form of that, is a place for the person who is good, which becomes a word for tomb or grave. Okay, but also a word, when you hear nefer, nefetari, neferet iri, and all that, we think of it as meaning good or beautiful and things like that, in that sense. So that's one. Then we have a word that is a word for death that becomes a word for a person who's dead, which is a deceased person, which is the word au. That's another word. And I can go on and on and on. Then we have a word to die, a verb, mut. And then we have the pertaining to a deceased person or someone who is dead, we have mutet, which would be a female dead person. So we have that. And and on and on. So when you ask me to give an example, it's hard to do that. So we would have to build on that, and I would have to pull a text, and we got to go specifically on which text and stuff like that. But just in general, there are a lot of words that are translated as deceased. Matter of fact, the word that means triumph, makeru as a phrase is a word that's translated as deceased as well. But it actually literally means true of voice. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So you don't have to be you don't have to be dead to be true of voice. I mean, you don't have to be dead in our concepts of dead. Like, you're not breathing dead, you know what I'm saying, to be true of voice. But yet makeru is translated as deceased sometimes.
Got it. I mean, but that make a lot of sense as far as the conversation that Rob was having.
Yeah.
Earlier today. But I got it.
Yeah, so we can build on that. It's just I'm going off the top of my head right now.
Sure.
And there's several words. Like, what you can do, this is what I suggest, if you're familiar with an Egyptian dictionary, just on your own, just look up the word deceased in English, and just look at all the different Egyptian words that is translated as deceased in English, but then try to look up the other meaning of the word. So, for example, a lot of these are idiomatically translated by early Egyptological scholars. And this is what I keep trying to tell everyone, is that when you're dealing with figurative text, see, the challenge for us, right, and this is funny, this is kind of interesting and funny to me at the same time, is because we will kind of smirk our, raise our eyebrows at early Egyptology and early Egyptologists, such as, from Champollion to Lepsius to all those early folks who created these dictionaries. Champollion did a vocabulary, extensive vocabulary and dictionary, and a lot of others. You have Ermin and Grappa, which is the largest, which is called the Waterbox, Egyptian Waterbox Sprach, which is the largest Egyptian dictionary, and everything. And so what we don't do is we don't fact check those dictionaries in the first place. So we'll use them, but we don't fact check them. Like, wait a minute, how did they know that this word means this? And so how we fact check them is through historical comparative linguistics. And that's what these early Egyptologists did not do. Now, it's not to say that they're wrong, but we have to have a way to be able to check. And we do. But early on in history, they didn't. They didn't do that work. Okay. So they were able to ascertain what they did. And because they did, now they've been honest. Some scholars have been honest. Those early scholars have been honest with that. But it gets etched in scholarship as the consensus, and then people just parrot the consensus. But if you think about consensus as a concept, even in science, there's always going to be a consensus. But in order to advance knowledge, you have to break away from the consensus, but be able to prove or demonstrate or back your points up with evidence, and then the consensus will eventually catch up to it. So now there will be a new consensus. So there's always going to be a consensus, but there's always going to be pioneering work that's not going to agree with the consensus. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. The consensus may have to catch up to it. And so sometimes we find ourselves in points of time of scholarship where that change is occurring. And right now we're living in an era of time where African scholars have now stepped up to the plate ever since Diop. See, Diop, not only do we venerate Diop because he's, a black African, and he's, venerated in our circles and held up high, but Diop represents the beginning. And there's actually people before him too, but he stands out the most of an era of time where Africans have stepped up to the plate, that have multidisciplinary skills and are able to address issues of anthropology, whether it's archaeology, linguistics, anything dealing with cultural anthropology as an umbrella type of field, in all these different fields. And so now that Africans are stepping up to the plate, they are able to see Egypt in its African context, and they use their mother tongue to compare related languages to the Egyptian language itself and their own customs and history, oral traditions, and this, that, and the third. And they're able to give insights and fill in the gaps. And so a lot of things are being corrected right now in this day and time, within the last, like I said, Diop would be like a beacon of that start. And so we call this version of Egyptology the Diopian school of Egyptology. So you have the German school of Egyptology with Lepsius and his crew, Ermin the Grappa and all of those folks. You have the British school of Egyptology with Thomas Young and Budge and that crew. Then you have the American school of Egyptology with Breasted and that crew coming out of the Oriental Institute of Chicago and stuff like that. And now you have the French school too. Can't leave them out. But then you have the African school and all the scholars that come out of the Diopian school, following Diop. And so now things are, everybody has something to contribute. So I know I said a lot, but I'm just saying this for the record because I want people to understand again that Egypt is not a microwavable topic. It is always ongoing research and things like that. And at the very least, if you're going to talk about Egypt in any real meaningful way, you're going to have to at least learn the basics of the language to keep up with certain conversations, So I just want to say that to for everyone who's listening.
Yeah, that's good that you say that, because even even with the just people actually forget that it's a process, it's an ongoing process, just like we had with the decipherment. Like how everybody always assumed like, oh, Champollion deciphered, and then everybody's going off of what Champollion did, but they don't understand that that is a process, and everybody comes in and puts in plays a part and adds to that body of knowledge, and that's what we have now. There was that African school that was missing, especially on this kind of studies that involves an African culture.
Mhm.
So there's a lot to be added, and there's a lot of work really, because you not only do you have to learn the language part, to put the final missing pieces, you have to kind of go through the African studies with the linguistics and the other languages and the culture, and just center it around that. So it's a lot of work, and some people kind of just forget about that. Like, okay, I'm gonna go with the consensus, but that's all good. But when you're dealing with things like that is ongoing, then there is no stopping. So even for us, we always have to keep updating our stuff as well.
Yes, exactly. But let me give I'm gonna give a little preview of some of the things we're gonna talk about Monday evening. So Monday evening, again, for those who have just jumped on listening, before we go, Monday we're gonna have a live show, and we're gonna talk about a little bit more in depth about the figurative expression. But we're gonna go over some examples in Egyptian of these figurative expressions, just to kind of bring people up to speed that what it is, number one, and then the fact that it exists, and not only does it exist, but it's prolific in a lot of different texts. And so, for example, well, first of all, people got to understand what figurative language is, and like I said, we're gonna kind of go in more details on Monday. But basically, figurative expressions are the most common usage is when you compare two things that are not alike in some form or fashion, okay, and where you're not being literal. There's some kind of I could say figuration about your expression. And so let me give you an example. In Egypt, the egg, like a bird's egg, an egg is in Egypt, the egg was used to convey messages of origin, because obviously we all come from an egg, and when a bird hatches its egg, a little birdling chicklet comes out of the egg, so that kind of denoted origin. So the egg as an image became the word for sun, S-O-N, sun. All right. Now a human being is not an egg itself, but the egg became a figurative way of saying origin. So the egg as a picture of an item became the word Sa. And many of us have heard the name or the phrase Sa Ra, the son of Ra. And so when we see a king's name, Sa Ra, so-and-so, so-and-so, it's trying to convey that this king has a divine origin, not that he is an egg itself. Okay. And they get this from because the egg is the germ cell of life. Okay. And it was also used in the cosmology or cosmogonical text for the origin of the world, where this cosmic egg. Okay, so from there, the whole concept of origin. All right. And so you get this equation of the egg equaling the sun, not the sun, S-U-N, but the S-O-N, a son, a child, a son, a baby. Okay. And so, like, for example, and this is, I'm just giving examples now, but, we'll be able to give more Monday. Like, for example, King Hatshepsut was called the egg of Amen. She was also called the pure egg. Now, does that mean that Hatshepsut really believed that she was an egg? Or that the Egyptians believed that she was actually an egg, literally? No. in their culture, they understood the egg to be a figurative way of the reality of origin. So she comes forth from Amun, and they have a whole scene where she has a divine birth, where Amun, the deity Amun or Amin, he's commanding Khnum, the other deity Khnum, to fashion her Ka and Khat, which is her character, personality, and her body. Merge the two, because the word Khnum, the deity Khnum himself, his name means to join. So he joins a character to her physical body, and then Khnum's wife implant that union into the womb of Hatshepsut's mother, and then her mother gives birth to Hatshepsut. And so she has a human mother and a god as a father. And it explains her origin, but not literally. It just explains her legitimacy to the throne. See, every king in Egypt had to have a divine legitimacy to sit on the throne. And so none of that stuff is literal. Okay? And so even for me to say everything I just said, it takes time and study to be able to pierce the surface language, because you can read it, because once you learn to read it, you can read it, but then you got to pierce the veil of the figurative speech to get to those realities. And it takes time, because you got to pull from everything that you can. You got to do a whole lot of research. You got to do a whole lot of comparisons and things to really get to that point. And that's something that has to really, really be understood by people today. So that's why I say again that Egypt cannot be a microwave topic at all. Okay, you cannot do that. And so I just wanted to give that example, but we can get into some more, but I just want to give an example of the egg and how it became the word for son, and so on and so forth. All right. And this is particularly for the king. All right. And we're going to go over some more. All right. So, anything else, like anybody else on the panel? Cause whoever was sharing, it kind of like wiped my whole, I can't see anything. But as long as we still broadcasting,
I got a quick question.
We're good. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So I was reading the chat before you guys posted the link, and somebody else asked this question, but I had it before, and I remember you briefly talking about it. So it's regarding sacrifices and the sacrifices on the offering table. And I remember reading, I think it was in Muad Ashby's Pardon Haru, and he was speaking about how earlier in the early dynastic periods, they actually used real, I think it was it's a leg. I can't remember. I think it's an ox leg. I can't really remember, but it's on the offering table. And then later on, they stopped using it. So could you briefly talk about the significance and the meaning behind using a animal sacrifice, and kind of what it represented and what it meant, and then why they made the switch later on, if that's true?
Okay, well, the sacrifices were food, because the word hetep is food, and we use the word hetep or hetepu for peace. But what brings about that peace or that stillness or that tranquility is to replenishment of your vitals, which is by way of food and drink. And so it's just a matter of food. And I mean, that's all there is. Not all there is to it. There's more to it. But I mean, it's really that simple in terms of the animal sacrifices. Yeah, they ate them.
And then they stopped using. Right? Is that what about that part? So did they stop using it after a while?
No, you can see the foreleg of these ox and things like that, and even calf, all pretty much all throughout the history on the offering tables and things.
Okay, and so regarding that, I know that they didn't eat meat, so that wasn't a way of life all the time,
mm-hmm.
Or how do I make that connection? Because they had food, animals, and then they didn't eat meat, or is that only a certain part when they were sort of being, I guess, going through initiations or something like that?
Well, I mean, a lot of people under the impression that Egyptians were vegans or vegetarians, and I really don't know how they come to that conclusion because in the language in different texts, and even in the vignettes, which are the scenes that you see them killing birds, hanging them up, plucking them, cooking them, and all that kind of stuff. Today we would call that chicken. So we love chicken today. They love chicken back then. They eat a lot of fish and things like that, but they also ate a lot of grains and vegetables too. But some people want to push the veganism or vegetarianism on them as well, and that just wouldn't be an accurate thing to do.
You know what
So
I think it is? Because even if you look at the offering formula, it's like, they're like, I think mostly around those areas, and I know how it was like growing up on the continent, it's like meat, those are luxury stuff. And I guess that's why you find like most of that, like ox and fowl like that to be like really like one of those expensive and luxury and good stuff that they offer the king. So that would be, it's not something that everybody would have access to eat all the time. So we always say like on a continent, you're like vegetarian, not like, it's not a lifestyle, it's just what it is. You can eat what you can afford. And then once in a while, you can have the finer stuff, which would be like the chicken and all that stuff.
So have you guys ever came across something that actually says refrain from excrement or something like that? Like again, this is coming from Muada Ashby's version of the Persian Haru, where it says like, don't eat excrement around this time. And I guess excrement is not talking about like defecation, but more like just horrible food. Have you ever translated or seen something like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when they went into certain services and duties, they were barred from eating or partaking in certain things during that duration. So yeah, we do find that.
All right, cool. Thanks.
Yep, no problem. Yep. So that's there. It's just, it's like any society. You have a group, like right here in America today, you have a group of people who are pescatarian, vegetarian, vegans in different sectors of groups in terms of their choice, and we label them. But as Emiket said, in a lot of these communities, even today on the continent now, in different African communities, people may not be vegetarian by way of, hey, I want to be a vegetarian by choice, but it may just be the way it is because of the way that food comes into its supply and demand. The supply of food itself and affordability. So if you can afford it, you best believe people will probably be eating more chicken. As a matter of fact, there's a documentary on Netflix, and I forgot the name right now, but it's
Game Changers.
I'm not sure if it's Game Changers. That kind of, I think I did see that one, but there's a documentary that talks about the different consumptions of food around the world. And they're showing that countries that did not used to eat meat starting to eat meat and mimic the Western diet. And even here in America, chicken was not eaten like that until fairly recent. You'd be surprised when chicken became popular. I think it was in the 1950s, if I'm not mistaken, but don't quote me on that. But it wasn't until the 1950s and stuff, or whatever that year was, that range of years, that chicken became popular to eat. So we gotta look at that.
Yeah, I heard the chickens aren't even. I think they're like a mixture or like a kind of amalgamation of like two different breeds of birds, and then they're kind of made just that. And I think the cow that we have today? I'm not sure. I think those two. I heard that as well. But
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure about that. I don't know anything about that, but you'd be surprised at the change, the social evolution of diet just in this country. You ain't gotta go anywhere else. The evolution of diet just in this country. Over there in China, the same documentary shows over there in China where they have what's called wet shops, where they would actually, when you buy your meats, you're buying it super duper fresh because they kill it right in front of you. So you pick your animal and they kill it right there in front of you. You take it home, and they mix the blood and everything from various different animals right there on the table. Just boom, chop the neck off, and do whatever they boil a bird to pull the feathers off, to slide the feathers off right there in front of you. Kill it and boil it right there. And this is fairly new, in certain countries. Snake, cat, dog, rodents, spiders. I mean, you see it all in these other countries. I'm saying it's kind of fairly new, and they kind of go over that. But in terms of the Egyptian diet and stuff, there's books on that. There's one that we have. And by the way, for those who are listening, still tuned in, we're gonna do. The brother June is gonna organize some book giveaways for those who patronize our YouTube channel. So if you participate in everything like that, be on the lookout for that. We're gonna give away some books, and probably one of the first ones is gonna be the Egyptian way of life that talks about the how they eat and what they ate. So so there's books on that.
Okay, cool.
Yep. How about anybody else? Anybody else in here? I can't see who all's in here.
I have a question. Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I wanted to know, like, at what point of time in history were like regular citizens able to read and write the language?
Okay. At what point in time in their life, you mean? Or what point?
In history, because to my understanding, like at first they weren't able to read and write it. Like only like the higher ups were able to read and write it.
Yeah. Okay. So, I thought you meant in a individual's lifetime, but I see you mean in the history of Egypt, period. Like basically, right?
Yeah, when it just became like common knowledge.
Right. Okay. So, now to understand or to really appreciate that, you have to understand that it's way different than today, because today we're born in a world that is literate. Like there's writing all around the world, so everybody's literate. Everybody reads and writes. Pretty much that's the that's the norm today. In ancient times, it was flipped the other way, and it was out of necessity. See, we have to learn to read and write today to function, whereas in ancient times, they didn't necessarily have to read or write to just function normally. So reading and writing was more so optional, whereas today it's mandatory for us. So we have to have that understanding, number one. And then it was based on the need, the necessity of being able to read and write. And so early on, less people knew how to read read and write with the Sesh and the Simplified Sesh, which we call Hieroglyphic. But as time goes on, more and more people started to utilize it, and especially by the time you get to the period of the writing system style that they call Demotic, you have more people writing it, which is why Clement of Alexander called it Demoticus, which is where we get the word Demotic from, which means the population. So more of the general population started to write it in that time. All right. So if you want an exact date, I don't know off the top of my head. I can get that for you, but it was around the time of the style of writing called Demotic, and the Egyptians called that style of writing Seshnishat, and that's why they had a formal name for it, because more of the population started to be able to read and write, and so they had a name for it. There's no real formal name for hieratic or the other styles. So we have Sesh, Medew, Netcher, which are the formal hieroglyph, and then from there the next name we come up with is Seshnishat. And Seshnishat literally means the inscriptions of letters. Sesh, inscriptions, ni of, shat, letters, or papyri, books and things. All right, so hopefully that helped you out.
Definitely. I had one more question too. Why is it that Medew Netcher is categorized as Afro-Asiatic, but Sumerian is not?
Yeah, well, the Sumerian language is considered by linguists and a language isolate. So and a language isolate is a language that pretty much sits on an island of its own. They don't find any direct relations with other languages. So that's the reason why Sumerian is not included in Afroasiatic in terms of how they label it. But now beyond that, the Afroasiatic language phylum itself is not a actual valid language phylum. It's a hypothesis that's never been proven, but it's used heavily in scholarly works by non-linguists because Greenberg came up with the designation and grouped these languages together based on, for all intent and purposes, we would call it lookership. So based on surface features in the language, shallow surface features in language, he grouped certain languages together under the label of Afroasiatic. And so that's just stuck. And ever since then, people who had to refer to speakers of these various languages, they just kept using that umbrella term, Afroasiatic. So at this point now in 2020, people are so used to that term that everyone uses it, scholar or not. So that's it. But now, as far as the Egyptian language itself, that's a bit tricky because scholars would divide the Egyptian language. First of all, scholars view the Egyptian language as one language, and they divide it into 5 stages, similar to how we have English, where we have Old English, Middle English, and then Modern English. But it's still English through 3 stages. But they look at Egyptian the same way. They say Old Egyptian, Middle Egyptian, Late Egyptian, Demotic, and Coptic, 5 stages. But based on more rigorous research and now the comparisons with related African languages, dispensing with the Greensburg classification, now it's been discovered that Egyptian is not one language that went through 5 stages, but more than one language. More than one very closely related languages, though. Okay? So the game is changing now. So, when you ask me the question, there's a lot that we could kind of build on and talk about, but that's the answer to your question straight on, is that Sumerian is an isolate, whereas Egyptian, there's more direct relations to other languages, but it's not Afroasiatic though.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I was doing a fair amount of research Asar on his work, comparing it to Bantu languages and things like that. That's why I asked that question.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And Asar, in his new book, Luja Volume 2, he goes into that. He has a lot of tables and demonstrating sound meaning correspondences, which is what historical linguists do, comparatists do, to establish these relationships. So, but it's in depth, and I encourage people to take up a basic course in comparative linguistics as well, and we're going to be doing that as part of our curriculum. It's going to be stage 3 of our level 1, and so we're going to be teaming up with Asar Imhotep on that.
Somebody was asking, I think, in regards to the question that Makish, I think that's if you pronounce it, said, let me see. It was, what about Coptic? Oh, okay, I think, did they have a name for it? I think he means, did the Remet have a name for Coptic?
Oh, no. The Coptic they called it, the language at all times. Okay, let me back up. The language at all times was called Rani Kemet. Okay, so the language was called Rani Kemet, and it's similar to what we would say a national language or a national designation of the most prominent speech in the country or in the kingdom. It was called Rani Kemet, and which means literally, it means the mouth of the riparian land, which is what Kemet is. It means the mouth of it, but we know that dirt and land and geography doesn't really speak literally, but it's a way of saying that which come out the mouth, which is words and language. So Rani Kemet is the name of the language, but at different points in time, a specific language became the prominent spoken vernacular. And so and that's what scholars are trying to divide into 5 stages, but come to find out it's several closely related languages. So Coptic was also called Rodney Kemet as a language, but the writing system was called Coptic, Coptos, and because they used the Greek characters to write that specific African language.
What's the name of the book again that you said backs up the claim that the Medew was the first script?
Oh, okay, man. Yeah, I'm not prepared to share my screen or anything because I could tell you, but I'm saying I'm used to, like, as I talk and answer these questions, I always like to show and demonstrate things. But unfortunately, I can't do it tonight. So, but I'll tell you, the book is called Visible Language. Visible Language, and I have a picture of the cover and everything. I just can't show it.
Okay, cool.
But it's called Visible Language. And I believe their latest edition, because I think it's 2 editions. The latest one was done in 2016, I believe, or 15.
And I think it connects to the question the other brother just asked. He was speaking about, I think he asked you about the Sumerian, and so that's almost the same as the Mesopotamian, right? Where they kind of, some scholars say that, or linguists say that this one came before it, and they always try to compare the Medew language to the Mesopotamian and say it came before. So is basically what I'm asking, is the Mesopotamian and the Sumerian, is that sort of the same thing?
No. So let's make sure we clear up a distinction here. And it's normal for in common conversation that we say language when we really mean the writing system. Yeah. Right. So we got language, which is spoken, and then the script, which is written. So in these conversations, we got to make sure we keep those separate like that. So they're talking about the script, which one came first, the writing system. That's been the debate. Nobody debates, which language came first. So what people are debating is what writing system came first. And in that book, you're going to find that they date the hieroglyphs to be before the pictorial writing system of Sumerian.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's hard to date spoken languages. I mean, that's, no linguist is going to try.
Yeah, I misspoke. Yeah, I misspoke.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just saying for everybody else. Okay. Why? Because see, sometimes when I do this, it may seem like I'm being real particular and because I get accused of slowing things down too far and I'm being too meticulous and everything. But I'm gonna tell you all, a lot of these studies, that's what it takes. And if a lot of us, anybody who's gone to graduate school or college and things like that, you pretty much know that's what the deal is. You gotta really be very rigorous in your studies, and you got to be more precise, because being precise will clear up a lot of ambiguity, and so I always like to make sure that we're clear on everything. Don't skip a beat. And sometimes it takes us slowing the conversation down, to where we got to say, okay, people want to talk about spirituality, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, before we talk about spirituality, that's such a polarized and ambiguous term among various different people. First, let's define what a spirit is and what it's made of. And they're like, oh, there you go with y'all talking about, and I'm like, yes, or else don't count me in. I can't have that conversation, because if we don't even have a working definition and understanding of what a spirit is, then how in the world can we talk about spirit, what is spiritual and what is spirituality? You see, it just makes sense. And that's what it's going to take. But in our demand to be bombarded with entertainment and be stimulated, our minds to be stimulated, we bypass all that and we just want to have fun and fuss and fight and argue online and stuff like that. So sometimes you got to slow it down. Sometimes you got to slow things way down. Even with this figurative thing, that's what we're going to do Monday. We're just going to touch on some things and slow it down. Slow down this figurative expression and we use it today, all day, every day. You know. But I see we got quite a few people in here. I can't see everybody. But I can see the number. We got 12 people in here. So anybody else got anybody
I got
else?
a question about that Waterberg. Is there an easier way outside of learning German to search through it to try to get, I guess, like to figure out where stuff's coming, where the word is used, or you just have to learn German?
Well, let me say this. If you were to take up Egyptology in college, one of the suggestions and sometimes even a requirement is that you learn French and German for that purpose. Like if you want to become an Egyptologist, like if you want to become a scholar, that's what they put you on. But to answer your question, there's an online version of the Wörterbuch. And maybe I'll give a tutorial on how to use it so that people can start to use that, because I can't really explain it, with just words.
I didn't open it up and stuff, and I didn't seen it. It ain't, you need some instruction.
right. You need a separate book just to tell you how to use it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I was like, okay, that's where I stopped here.
Right. No, there's an online version that's also in German, but it makes it easier than reading the handwritten physical copies of the Wörterbuch. But if you can learn German, if you can take that time, that's a serious step.
It'll help.
It definitely help. Definitely. Yep.
That's one thing about y'all. Y'all was real meticulous. That's why you can't say y'all interpretations aren't justified. Y'all put in some serious detailed work. Y'all for the publications, man.
Well,
you can tell who not reading them.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It goes back to what I'm saying. You like Egypt, man. Egypt is not a microwavable topic to discuss. Like you can't talk about Egypt in passing. And this is funny though, because if I mention string theory, if I mention quantum theory, quantum mechanics, and if I mention astrophysics as umbrella disciplines, nobody's gonna expect you to microwave that. Like right now, if we were to open up a topic about quantum mechanics, everybody would expect you to be very precise and speak with precision and slow it down. We're not gonna rush and everything like that. But for some reason, when it comes to Egypt, everybody wants to fly through it and start talking about the ether world and the afterlife and the esoteric and aliens and stuff like that, instead of getting down and treat it like a science. You know what I'm saying? And that's what we got to do. So that's what we try to do.
Anybody that follow y'all know that, because you can really tell who not reading what y'all putting out and who just doing just that, going off to basically appealing to authority and not even really touching the language and whatnot.
Hey, Chavis, you know how Unc say, I see you. I see you. Hey, no, but for reals though, I see you, man. I be on, I see your name in the Facebook chats, and I see what you doing on there, man. Just keep it up,
I'm learning from y'all.
Okay, bro. Yep, that's right.
Gotta get you in the class. I gotta get you in the class, Chavis.
I know it. I'm trying to get in regular school and get in this class.
All right, because this is the thing. I'm trying to raise an army of scribes. We all are, and of course, we're not proselytizing, but people who are interested, we want to let people know that we can learn it, and you shouldn't be intimidated, because this language.
Anybody that look at it like that, I think they just got some horrible reasoning. They think you're trying. This is a language, man. You want to learn it. You want to know the context of certain things instead of just opening up a dictionary and guessing.
Exactly. So that's what's going to take. So I see we got, like I said, we got 12 people. Anybody want to grab the mic? Got a question, something to share, or whatever?
Yeah, we haven't heard from Sinet Lisa and Sin Chris.
Oh, Chris is here, Lisa. All right, because I can't see who it is, but I can see that, I can see at the top we have Marquise,
Chris,
June, Tyree,
Chris.
Street
Yeah,
Scholar.
hey, I have another. I just want to share some. I definitely appreciate you guys sharing the information. Dealing with African studies because I went to Morris Brown, and I did have some African study classes, with Dr. Scales and Marimba Ali, and Mario Beatty. But you guys definitely cleared up a lot of errors. So I definitely appreciate that. But the all that stuff we learned back in the '90s. Let's keep up the good work, man.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate that, and that's what we look. That's what we look to do: clarify, share, and learn. Because we're all learning. And I tell people, because even with learning the language, because everybody will have a certain level of proficiency in a language, and if I were to grade myself in the proficient in language, I feel that I can pretty much break down a language, a whole lot, different elements of the language and everything. But even with that, knowing all of that stuff, it still doesn't make me automatically by default know the realities behind the real meanings behind the figurative expressions in the way that they wrote the text, different genres of text, I should say. And so that takes a whole nother layer of rigorous scholarship and research. And so that's why I try to tell people that even when you learn the language, you're still a baby. I mean, even if you learn the grammar and all that stuff, you're still a baby in this. So when people don't show interest in learning the language, but yet they want to jump way ahead and get to the finish line and talk about the esoteric stuff and all that other kind of stuff, the spooky stuff, then it does it a disservice, and it hurts any progress that we can make, because then it opens up for anything. It's almost like how people do the Bible, where you can open the Bible, you can throw the Bible in the air, and whatever page it land on, you can make it say anything you want. You know what I'm saying? You could take a verse and and twist it and spin it and make it say pretty much anything you want, because people are detached from the realities behind those figurative expressions. For a person to believe that a snake literally talked in the garden, that would be crazy. But there are, although there are people who may believe that literally, but 99 out of 100 times, the intended author who wanted to convey that message was not trying to convey a literal message. So the snake must represent something else in reality. Like I always use the famous metaphor, I got butterflies in my stomach. Butterflies being in my stomach is not literal. It represents nervousness. So the reality is nervousness, but the way I'm expressing it is in a figurative way. The butterflies being in my stomach, something flapping in my stomach, because when you feel a surge of nervousness, it comes from your solar plexus, your abdomen area. And so that's what they identify with. So anyway, just wanted to I don't know who else is in here. Maybe I could fix this. Or I can see everybody's name. So we got Tyree, Chavis, Nisu Ray, Lisa, Kofi, Kadeem, Chris, Marquise. And I guess nobody else is in the chat. Everybody from the chat is in here. Huh?
Everybody's in here. But hey, if nobody's gonna ask, I was just gonna say that. Oh, go ahead.
Oh.
I'll say Hotep. I'm here.
Okay, that's good.
All right.
Kadeem is breaking off a bit, so.
Oh, Kadeem, your mic is
Am I breaking up?
There you
You're
go.
Good now.
Hold on.
Okay, I think you went into. You definitely if you're talking, we can't hear you. All right, so we keep it moving. So Kadeem, we had to probably come right back around to you.
Yeah, but so I mean, just for the chat, everybody who's always participating, like y'all intimidate a lot of people if you didn't know. Like some people actually get scared to come on this show. No, because they're like, the chat is like so up on it, like, so that, that's a good thing, because at least we kind of like, I feel like we kind of spoil, because like even our audience is like really really like really really good. It's a whole different vibe, and actually even our chat actually scares people. Like, nah, they way too good on that Netcher. We can't come over there. So
Hey,
yeah.
Actually, the Sunday class that is going on now for the last like 3 months, maybe, or close to it, is pretty. It's a good, a large group number wise, but they're also pretty good. They really, yeah, they seem to really be on top of it as well. As when they like say the offering formula or answering things. They're on it too.
yeah,
That's
I want
true.
to say this too, because we've kind of went on a hiatus from doing Freestyle Friday, and now that we want to get back in the flow and be consistent with it. I'm looking at the participation, and I'm seeing that people have learning and are learning, and so that's a good sign. That's like a breath of fresh air. So, and some of you all are on here now. So like Chavis, some people I've seen in the chat, Omar Reed, he's not in here now, but obviously, he's been watching and learning things because now he's able to participate. So that's a beautiful sign. That's a beautiful thing. I just want to make sure people get into the class, so that we can formalize the skills, because like I said, I always say I'm stingy with the certificates, and if you go through the class, I will guarantee that what we did tonight, you'll be able to do with the Freestyle Friday. Of course, freestyling is testing your testing those skills, but I'm saying you'll be able to take simple inscriptions like the one we showed and did tonight, and be able to do that kind of stuff on your own. And you put it to practice and more, and you'll be able to develop your skills. Now, here's the big thing. A lot of people ask, is it worth it? Like, what does it do? Like, why should I learn this language? It's dead language. Nobody's speaking. I can't walk in the store and speak to anybody with this language. It doesn't put food on my table or money in my pocket. And so when people ask me that, I'm like, well, if that's what you're looking for, then the language is not for you. Learning the language is a necessary requirement if you want to engage the culture. If you want to learn about the culture and you want to engage it for whatever those reasons are, you got to go through the language. So that's what it's for. That's who it's for and what it's for. If you don't want to engage the culture and you can care less about Egypt, then obviously, the language is not going to do anything for you. So I always like to remind people of that. And then then the next question, the follow-up question would be, well, why should we even engage the culture? And then that gets into another answer of, you got to convince people that the ancient Egyptians were, as a culture as a whole, not everybody in the culture, but as a general culture, they were geniuses. And so we want to tap into that mind. We don't want to live in the past. We don't want to go over there and live in the sandy deserts and stuff like that. We want to tap into the mind. What mentality did these people have to erect and create such a great civilization, one of the greatest civilization on the planet? What was going on in their mind for them to do that? That's what we want. That's what we need. And so that's one of the main reasons to tap into it. And there you go. So we want to get this on and popping. So all these people who are claiming, a lot of people are criticizing people who claim to practice Kemetic tradition and culture. So you got people who are ridiculing them or getting on them for practicing something that they call Kemetic spirituality. And then you got people who are practitioners of Kemetic spirituality that are doing things that may be, way out there as well. So on the both sides of that, you see some messy stuff going on. And so to straighten both sides out, people need to just learn the language and go through the process of engaging the culture first. That's why when I was asked earlier today on another platform, on Dagger Squad platform, someone asked me, do I practice Kemetic spirituality? I tell them straight up, they didn't even have to finish that sentence. I said no. Because in order to effectively practice that and everything, you have to go through a whole bunch of steps to know what it is that you're practicing. And that's the problem. A lot of people jump the gun before they even get to know what it is. They want to practice it, and they end up practicing something wrong, thinking it's right, but it's wrong. So it's levels to this. It comes in stages. So maybe one day we can start incorporating some applicable things. Now, of course, everything's not applicable. I mean, we're in the age of technology. We got machines, robots, and artificial intelligence and all this kind of stuff. So we're never going to practice any ancient culture the exact way it was. But there's elements that we can sure incorporate in our lives today. But we still got to get to that point as well. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure people understand that. Listen, let me share. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, concerning what you just said, you always have this. I think you posted this really good statement by Dr. Theophilo Benga concerning how we should learn the language. I think that's really a really good statement that people kind of tend to forget. But yeah. It's a summary of what you were just talking about.
Yep, and that's in an introduction on the beginner's book. Yep. Yeah. So I've seen it. I've seen it all. I've seen the extreme of both ends. I've seen people critique heavily and don't know what they're talking about, and I've seen people who profess to be practitioners and are gung ho about that and don't know what they're talking about or what they're doing. So I've seen the extreme of both, and all we have to do is just pause, slow it down, and go through this learning process first. I remember driving one day, and I was stopping at a red light, but the windows were down, and I heard this clanking noise, clink, 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 and I'm looking for where the noise was coming from, and I look over to my right on the and I'm on a busy street, like in front of a mall, and I look and I see somebody walking, and it's this person dressed fully in an Egyptian looking garb with the Namuz headdress and everything, and he has a metal rod pole with an ankh on the top, and that's what he was clinking on the ground. It was clink, and then he'd take a step, clink, take a step, clink, take a step, and I was like, are you serious? And he was walking like it was normal, like he was on the streets of Egypt. Like I don't know. And I was like, man, go ahead, boy, go ahead with your bad self. But that was interesting. That's what it was. Seriously, it was loud. It was like clink, and I was like, and I was looking around to see if other people were looking at him. But yeah.
Are you in Atlanta?
Yep, it was in Atlanta. It was in Atlanta. Now hold up, but now I'm gonna tell you. When I first saw him, I didn't think the way I my first thought wasn't that. So what I did, I looked, and I thought maybe he was part of a larger group. So I kept looking behind him and stuff. I'm like, okay, it's got to be more of them. Because I refuse to believe that this man is out here by himself walking like that. I thought maybe they were going to some kind of party or function and they dressed up that way. I'm looking for other people, but nah, my man was by himself.
Nah, it's him. And I think he had a wife.
He was by himself.
I used to see him over there near Stone Mountain.
Yeah, I see a lot of that by Tassilis.
Yeah.
Oh, who said? Okay, Kadeem, I know you in Atlanta. Who said Tassilis? Who's that?
That was me, Marquise. Oh, we done met before in Atlanta, man. I went to your No Pseudo tour at the library. We met.
Oh, okay, all right, good, man. Because we're gonna start that back up. So anybody that's in Atlanta listening, make sure we stay networked, because we're gonna start those back up in face to face build sessions and ciphers and stuff. So we'll be able to have some fun,
Hey, I want to go pseudo.
Okay.
Say it again.
Do you ever come back to DC?
Oh no, I haven't, man. I haven't been back to DC in a minute. Born and raised there. I moved down in Georgia in '97, and I've been back since a few times, but I haven't been back in a while now though. But yeah, I need to go. Cause DC, man, last time I went, man, it's totally changed. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The neighbor
right now.
I'm in DC too. Yeah, I'm in Maryland, but same thing.
Nah, listen, it changed. It changed. Like I couldn't believe it, because when I was growing up in DC, there were no. It was like chocolate. The nickname Chocolate City, that was real.
Yeah,
that was real. All you saw was chocolate. You didn't see anything outside of chocolate unless you go like downtown where there are all the museums, tourists and stuff. But in the regular city, man, it was just chocolate until you get out to 16th Street and out there on the edges. But now, when I went up there last time, it totally changed. Blew my mind.
I came from California, so it's still, I can only imagine. I hear that a lot, but I'm still like amazed by how cultural it still is, just along Georgia Avenue, but people like, nah, it used to be way different. So
yeah, that's where I'm from. Georgia Avenue, 7th Street, all that stuff, Northwest.
Oh, okay.
Yes, definitely, boy. Howard University, that whole area.
Yeah, I work on Shepherd Street. Yeah.
Oh, I know where Shepherd Street is. Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, Woo-Jah.
Small world. Yeah.
Hey, Woo-Jah, I got a question for you.
Okay.
And I wanted, before the question, I want to tell you, man, I appreciate everything you do. You're
okay. Appreciate that.
But
that means the question, boy. I'm gonna be smacked up with the question. Huh?
Oh, no, you cool. Cause I'm gonna join your class. I'm gonna try to go on and join next month, man. Check it out. I think it'd just be fun. I ain't gonna be a practitioner or anything like that, but I think it'd be fun. Expand my mind. But anyway, the question I have for you is, these megaliths structures that they have. I was listening to a guy named Brian Foster or something like that.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
And he was stating that he believes that the Sphinx got water erosion on it, and it hasn't been water raining in that area since what he say about 11,000, 12,000 BC. Now, and they also saying that there was a cataclysm, a world cataclysm around that time, about 12,000 BC, where a meteor had hit, and they were looking for the smoking gun, and then they said they found it in the ice sheets of Greenland. They said, and that's how the Sahara became a wet, moggy, and then it turned to sand. So my question is the date that we having for Kemet and everything, do you think this is off because these megalithic structures, they don't have no hieroglyphics on them? They're I'm talking about there are tons and tons. I'm talking about they got granite, some metals that you can't even carve with a regular chisel. But they made bows and ceramics and all these things out of it. And you see it all over not just in Kemet, but all over the world. They got them in Machu Picchu, Turkey, all these megalithic structures. He's saying that there was a race of people that was here before, not aliens or nothing like that. They just saying there was people before that cataclysm, and then that cataclysm, that's why you got stories of the flood, because it was just the people that was on the edges of the ocean that got flooded out. And then the Sahara turned, it turned to a Sahara and all these things. So is he have any point? Because I don't want to get pseudo, but it's kind of making kind of sense. It's kind of making some sense to me. Can you explain that to me?
Okay, so this is how you do it. Now, this is when you got to put your scientific hat on, because it's fun to explore those ideas and proposals, but here's the issue that we are facing. If we are to follow evidence, those things have scant evidence. Like, in other words, like if you work your way from now backwards, the Egyptian civilization, in terms of what we can know of it and what we have access to is nowhere near 12,000, 25,000, 50,000 years old. Writing was not invented until approximately 5,000 years ago. And so the civilization that's responsible for that invention of writing and all the information that they wrote and recorded, whether it's on the walls or on different papyri, we know and have the dating range for that. Now, if there was a group of people that lived in that area prior to that group of people, then there's really no way for us to even tap into the culture or their genius or anything. Why? Because they didn't record anything or left anything for us to examine.
Okay, so what about the what they call the children of Horus, or the kings that was before the first Narmer that he said was like 20 or something more kings before that? Or do that have any validity to it?
No, because the people, the only reason why we even know, you talking about the Shemsu Heru, the only reason why we even know about the Shemsu Heru because it was written within that 5,000 period I'm talking about by the people who were there that we do know. You see what I'm saying? So it wasn't written by somebody at the proposed dates that they're given. There's no records of anything from those dates that they're proposing. So what they're looking at are, as you said, these megaliths, these huge monuments of the Sphinx, the three pyramids of Giza and stuff like that. And so they're coming up with these proposals to explain. They're trying to explain what they're observing. So they're saying what they're calling the water erosion, and they're putting these ideas and hypotheses together and putting them out there. And then, over time, they're testing them. That's why they say they're in search for a smoking gun and stuff like that. But over the years, they're doing this kind of work. But there's no conclusions that are coming out of that as of yet. And as far as evidence, to follow the evidence, there's not that much to bite on. So what we're left with is, okay, instead of focusing on that, let's focus on what we do have access to, what we do know, and what we can put our hands on, which is this 5,000 year range of information. And trust me, it's a ton of that. You know what I'm saying? So let's get through that ton of information first and let them explore all that stuff over there. Robert Bauval, Thomas Brophy, Brian Foster, and all those.
Shot, yeah.
Yeah, you got all those people, and you got the late John Anthony West, and that whole crew, they go around the world. Some of them go around the world, and they visit what is it, Central America? I forget the Pacu areas.
Machu Picchu.
Yeah, Machu Picchu, Gebel Teki or whatever over there in Turkey or whatever, and they'll do some stuff in Egypt. They'll even go to Australia. They claim that there's some glyphs over there in Australia, which end up being fake and stuff. So those guys can do that. You know what I'm saying? Our focus, because see, the reason why they can do that, I'm gonna tell you this too. The reason why they can do it and they get the funding and they get the support and the people behind them is because you gotta understand, the European communities had a huge jump ahead of the African communities when it came to studying Egypt. So from the decipherment period of the late 1700s, early 1800s, they created the discipline of Egyptology, and they ran it way ahead. So now here we come with our prominent scholar Diop being like the beacon of this African school of Egyptology. We have a lot of catching up to do. So they already went through what we're re-examining. So now they can explore outside of that. So yeah, they're gonna explore all those theories. A lost city of Atlantis and Mu, this other culture that lived in Egypt, and maybe this flood came and sunk them, and that may be the lost city of Atlantis and Mu, that Plato was talking about, or whoever. They can explore all that kind of stuff. We really can't afford to deal with that. Now, if they come with some smoking guns, then we have no choice but to look at it. But until then, me personally, I've watched their documentaries. I've read their books. I got Thomas Brophy, Bauval books, Black Genesis, the Imhotep one, John Anthony West, that whole documentary series. I used to watch it all the time. I watched it many times. I've been there, done that, but it's a dead end. It doesn't really take you anywhere. It's just nice. It's just interesting. That's it. You can't really do anything with that. You know what I'm saying? The Sphinx, some people say the Sphinx was originally a dog, a canine head. Some people say it was a lion head. Then it got recarved into a pharaoh or king's head. Then some people say the king's head is a woman. I let them debate all that stuff because it really doesn't.
It's a trip, man. Because when they was showing the tool marks, I'm like, there's no way, man, that you could take a chisel and chisel these bows and these angles, and you can see the marks that's been left. I mean, it just no. I mean, I'm just trying to be putting a human factor into it. I mean, come on, man. It's just something about that to me.
Now check this out, though. Here's the thing. I hear you, and and that is amazing. But here's the thing. They didn't know how they could possibly move, multi-ton blocks and bricks and statues either. But the Egyptians reveal how they did it, how they do that kind of stuff with a sled, and how they calculated the water on the sand, and how just enough water reacts to the sand, and the surface of the sand will create a slick surface to be able to drag these blocks with ease. At that ease, and then also the alignment of temples and things like that, and then their calendar. Because here's the thing, some people will assume that in order to create a calendar that knew about the great year of 25,980 years, that you would have had to been alive, or at least a civilization existing for that long or longer to witness it at least once, one cycle or two. But that's not the case. You can use superior skills in mathematics to project patterns to come up with these numbers and formulas and things like that. So it's not always what people think. And so you got to remember, that's why what I said earlier about learning their language, to tap into the genius of these people. So we have to give these people credit where credit is due. They were geniuses, in what they're doing. All right, somebody is sharing, and that threw my whole thing off. You gotta warn me when you're sharing something.
Oh, sorry about that. Was no yes. But yeah, just because you were talking about that learning process.
All right.
Yeah, I appreciate that though.
Yeah. So I say, man, knock yourself out. It's interesting to me though. Yeah, I checked it out. I got the books. I read it. What I did like is, I like the evidence. I don't really focus on the commentary that they give, because a lot of times they are way out there with their suspicions and speculations. But when they show actual data and show things, like for example Napta Playa, when they show those stones and the arrangements and their alignments and stuff like that, and their age and how they are and where they are located in Egypt and stuff, that's stuff that we can use. Those are things that we can bite on, when they do things like that. But when they start talking about supposed civilizations sinking in the sea and all that good stuff, yeah, and then the thousands of years of gods on earth ruling, called the Shimsu Heru and all that. Nah, it's not happening. How is a king going to rule for 2,500 years? Like,
yeah, I was thinking on the king's list that they had like 20 other kings that was on there. I may be mistaken. That's my bad.
Have you ever been to any mounds, like in the States, like the ones that are along the Mississippi and Ohio? Or have you ever looked into
I've been to
them?
I've been to ones in Georgia, here in Georgia.
Okay. Do you see any correlation? Now, I'm not trying to get pseudo either, but since the gate was open, I had to jump in. I'm like, okay, it's speculative right now. This is my time to slip it in there. So, yeah, I was just wondering because I lived in St. Louis for a while and been kind of working on something involving the mounds. And a part of southern Illinois, they call it Little Egypt, and it's a place there called Luxor, and it's a place there called, it's a Cairo, Illinois as well, Luxor, and the Thieves, and the Saluki. That's the name of I think it's the Salukis is a basketball team mascot, but it's a whole lot of correlation. I'm not gonna get into it, but they call it Little Egypt, and then it's a whole bunch of mounds, and I've actually been to them, took my sons to them. You can go inside of them. You can't go inside of them now, but I'm just saying it's not. Some people just think it's just a mound of dirt, and it happened when plates sort of slid, but that's not what it is. They got pictures of some of them they've explored, some of them they haven't. And I was just wondering if you, since we was, like I said, since the vortex was open, I was just gonna ask you about it.
Oh, no, I haven't seen any correlation, at least the ones I've seen here in Georgia, but I haven't been to the other ones you're talking about and stuff. I've seen pictures of mounds. I've seen pictures of mounds. I've seen pictures of pyramid-like structures in Central America, South America, and all that. But like I said, that would be interesting, But see, the same rigor that I'm pushing for people to put into Egypt would be the same rigor I would repeat and say for people to put in those other places too. But in this kind of study, you can't spread yourself too thin. So right now, my focus is in the Nile Valley and its delta. And if I ever get a chance, then I may look into that, because I was fascinated about Easter Island, those statues that were buried. And for a long time, people thought it was just a head until they dug up a whole bodies. Those heads were attached to whole bodies there, so things like that. But me personally, I don't have room to explore those things yet.
It makes sense because like even when like studying science, like you can't talk about like molecules without talking about atoms, and you can't talk about atoms without talking about particles. So I understand like with anything you don't want to just quickly move to the next stage or to the next level, because then you can just it's easier for you to make more mistakes. And this is really one of the only places that
and
it's
plus
like
you have
a
to
PhD level.
You have to follow the breadcrumbs of evidence. And so if you're like, for now, if we're studying Egypt, then if Egypt leads you somewhere else, then it will, because there's no evidence that any Egyptians came over to the Americas at all, or none of that stuff. So if there's a correlation as it stands right now, we have to just table a tentative conclusion that it's just coincidence. You see what I'm saying? So it's nothing we could really bite on, because there's no evidence that the Egyptians came to America at all. All the glyphs are pictures of things that's in the Nile Valley and the Delta. There's no grizzly bears. There's no tigers in the glyphs. None of that stuff. And that's another thing. We live in an accessible world. In ancient times, and especially further back you go in antiquity, humans didn't move around like that. They, number one, they didn't have the modes of transportation we do, but even still, migration was not like that. Like people didn't have a concept of continents back then. They didn't picture Africa as Africa. There was no image, there was no conceptualization of an Africa like we have today to them. And we got to remember that. You know what I'm saying? They didn't conceive that like that.
So I gotta ask you this, because I was thinking this earlier. So I know there's no proof, but I just want to know sort of like what you think about this. So do you really think that it's coming straight out of the Dark Ages into the Renaissance or whatever, that we needed, with all of our intelligence, that we needed somebody to sort of bring us to America? Like it took them coming out of the Dark Ages, like stumbling upon something that we didn't have after, living the way they were living, to sort of be like, to bring us over involuntarily like that? Or do you?
Okay, so let me kind of dissect what you're saying. So when you say we,
okay, I meant like my bad. I meant people from the African continent. So did you think that, like, because that's a lot of people, that's what people suggest. They suggest that that was our first time, or that is the first time that Africans came over to the continent when Europeans brought us over during slavery. But there were already people in South America. And, you know,
that's not true. That's not true. The Africans there were Africans in America before the transatlantic slave trade. But but wait, let me just clarify that because the abos gonna be like, yes. So no. So let me clarify that. What I mean by Africans is that all Homo sapiens on the planet are ultimately Africans. And so the migration patterns of Homo sapiens over time led them over here to the Americas. But the time it took for them to do all that stuff, there were mutations and everything. We just don't call them Africans. But so in that sense, these humans that were here, they were ultimately, their lineages can be traced back to Africa. So when you say, that's why I wanted clarification when you say we, if you're talking about Africans during a certain era of time during the transatlantic slave trade, we didn't need to be brought over here. Like those Africans back then during the, from the 1400s and, let's just round it to the 1400s and bring it up. They didn't have to come over here or whatever. They didn't have to go anywhere and whatnot at all. Like there was no need. We were fine. You know what I'm saying? We were fine with our own problems and solutions and living and cultures and stuff like that. No, we didn't need to be brought over here at all. Not at all. But in terms of like how you're asking and stuff like that, yeah, there were people here before they got here. Those people ultimately came from Africa though. The further back you go, they came from Africa. But what I was saying, that ties to what I was saying earlier. Human migrations didn't happen. There was no such thing as, like going from vacation and, like we do today. We spent 8 hours in a plane. We can pretty much go anywhere in Europe from the Americas into Europe and go to Africa with 8 hours. We can go 8 hours in any direction. We're good. But for them to migrate, people didn't have the urge to move around this. But remember, we do a lot of things out of luxuries today. Even art. Like I think somebody's I'm gonna have to mute Kofi, I'm gonna mute you. Oh, I thought I heard somebody's okay, that's heard a car. See, a lot of things we do today, man, we do it as a pastime, as luxury or entertainment and all that kind of stuff. Whereas some of the things that we do that for today, back in the day, was out of necessity. People didn't have to move. I mean, they only moved to gain more resources, or when a certain location became overpopulated and people may have been beefing for food and supplies and resources, so they had to split and migrate and expand and move out and move away and stuff like that. Whereas today, we go to Jamaica in a heart, skipping a jump, or we go to this place or that place. So it's a totally different world, and that's what we don't understand, because we're living in a world in a major paradigm shift. When the internet was introduced to the public in around 92, 93 or whatever, that is a game changer. We're just now feeling the beginning effects of that. Like it's a big delay, but we're feeling the effects of that. It changes the way we even think. We have access to each other real fast. Like I'm on here. We're all on here right now because of the internet. We have access to each other by email, very fast access. We got FaceTime, video, all this other kind of stuff, access to information at our fingertips and everything like that. That's a game changer. Just from right now, and you go back to the 1970s, it's a big difference in the social environment. It's how we do things, how we see things. So if let's say somebody committed a severe crime in the 80s, and they had to serve a real long jail time, and they just get out today. Do you know how different the world would be to that person? Even if while in jail, they still kind of, get visitors and keep up with the news and stuff. But still, just even living out, it'll just be a drastic difference. It's big. It's just big
Yeah,
difference.
it's like they went from dial-up phones to straight to touchscreen phones.
Exactly.
That's a weird. That's a weird like
Payphones,
counter.
payphones and pagers to not even flip phones. It's just a straight up smartphone right there with face recognition. You just hold your phone up to your face and it'll dial a number. You could talk to your phone now. You know,
Hey, I hope he got what you were saying, Saber Wujal, because you know, with all Homo sapiens being African, they can trace their heritage back to Africa. But like you were saying, going through those different migration periods, I mean, it took years and years and years and years for them to get from one place to another. Like, you know, it wasn't like they could get in a car or plane, like you said, and be there in 8 and 9 hours. But you know, there's a lot of confusion where people say, you know, and I think I heard that doing this discussion, the remit sale to the New World, or people got this assumption that, which is no evidence for that, or it's no evidence for Africans in West Africa pertaining to Mansa Musa, and I think it's during the period of Mansa Musa selling those ships over here, and they never did return, and then Mansa Musa selling over here to the New World. So a lot of people are getting a lot of that information, as a lot of people from that era sailed over here. There's no evidence them making it to the New World and staking a flag over here. There's no evidence of the remit even selling and making it over here to the New World. So a lot of people are getting that confused that we was already over here, you know what I'm saying, before the European came over here. A lot of people are using those conversations. I done been around with those conversations again with the era of Mansa Musa, Nim, and the era of the remit. So I just hope he understood what you were saying with the people Homo sapien migrating out of Africa and other different regions. But it took years and years and years, and through those years and years and years, they went through a lot of different mutation stages due to the geographical pressures and locations and the food and et cetera that grows in the ground and so forth.
Oh, I definitely understood. I definitely agree. I think again, this is like it's really scholarly. So in terms of, it's different from other things. So when I look into what they were doing in Kemet, and I'm like, damn, you built these pyramids and they go 400 or something feet, you know, below the ground, and, you know, so high up in the sky that it's hard. And then it's ships that's still well put together and preserved inside of some of the pyramids or museums right now that are still in the museums. So I'm just looking at all of the technology, and, you know, your mind wanders. So you have to, outside of like the scholarly academic, you know, what we have proof for, we all have to sort of use, you know, our speculation, our imagination still. So I'm like, it's hard for me to say, even though we don't have proof. I'm not saying Ramesses win or Mansa Musa win. I don't know who the first ones to go, but I'm like, man, you look up in the sky and you see all of the stars and you can align this with that. It's hard for me not to think that they didn't have the technology or the wherewithal to be able to travel to a land that I believe that they knew about it, right? Just based off of, that's just me extrapolating, but I don't want to get pseudo or go, you know, back and forth. And everybody might think something different, but I don't know. It's just hard for me to believe that people weren't traveling until the 1400s by a group of people that came out of the Dark Ages. And that's just all I can sort of, that's just what I'm just interpreting from what the evidence that we have. But we don't have any evidence saying they did it, but it's hard, like, man, you did this and that. We keep discovering amazing things to just be like, you know, we don't have evidence, so it didn't happen until we had evidence. I get that. I understand how that works.
The boats was made for the river, not for the ocean.
Right, no doubt. Along the coast, and you're right. Believe me, I studied, you know what I mean, as well. But again, I'm just saying, even though we don't have evidence, It's hard for me to believe that, the Portuguese or Spain was the first group to get the veil or whatever it was to allow them to travel.
Yeah, that's what evidence is pointing at to the Portuguese during that era, during Henry the Navigator, that period. That's when you start to see a lot of the technology being developed for the mask and different things that was put on the boat where they was able to sell for. I mean, that's the only evidence I came across was doing.
You breaking up pretty bad.
I'm messing up. Didn't the Vikings come over there first? Come over here first though?
Yeah, he doesn't realize he's breaking up.
Henry the Navigator and.
But listen,
I'm in the car.
Oh yeah, you're breaking up really bad. But listen, we have to consider this too, right? Today, listen, we have to always remember this. Our social environment, our social aquarium that we're swimming in today is a very different paradigm than it was in antiquity. And when I always use the word paradigm because a paradigm shift means that you got to shift everything. There's a realignment of everything, every single thing. So I say that because today we are fortunate enough to know about the entire globe of the earth. We know where land is and where water is today. We know the size of the land masses. We call them continents or whatever, islands and all this other kind of stuff. But we pretty much know its capacity and where things are. But if you're dealing with people who didn't even have a need to move, so we got to think about that. Like we today we can assume like, okay, yes, because these people were geniuses, then it's hard to believe that they didn't come over here. But you gotta be empathetic and put yourself in their shoes for real, and say, well, would they even have a need to go over here or explore over here or a desire to go over here or there and this, that, and the third? You got to think about all of these things. And then you got to consider so much more with that. Were they pastoralists? Were they nomadic? Were they hunter-gatherers? What was going on for them to have to even need to come and do this? Because today we move around just because we want to, just on some GP stuff. Whereas people of humanity in antiquity moved only out of necessity. Because remember, a lot of things were dangerous around villages and communities and stuff like that. Unlike today, like that's why when you live in a city, see, us growing up in a city, we can't even conceptualize this. And that's why city folks, when they visit their relatives out there in the suburbs and stuff, we say, oh, you live out in the country. And most city folks can't even hang out there in the country. You can't even pitch a tent out there because you'd be worried about some animals or some noises that you're hearing and stuff like that. That's today. So imagine back then, human beings did not move around like that unless they were, following the herds and stuff like that. Hunter gatherers, they would follow wherever the animals would go, to that extent. But it wasn't like today. So we gotta stay up on these, and we can't retrofit our ideals of today back then. We gotta always consider all of these different variables in there. When we come away with these conclusions, and then most importantly, just follow the evidence. If there's no evidence and you can't bite on nothing, you're gonna starve.
Back to the language though. Let me ask you about Nubia. Has anybody deciphered the Nubian script? And if they have, or is anybody working on it? Because I know Nubian Kemet was really kind of close, and then you have some people some Egyptian that was cool with some Nubians, and some Nubians they wasn't. So I know that the Nubians had to be fighting between each other, knowing that, hey, you are going over here to Kemet, and you in this area. Has anybody deciphered that Nubian script and anything like that? Because I noticed we talk Kemet a lot, but we won't never really mention Nubia like that with all those pyramids and things that they have.
Well, the pyramids in what they're calling Nubia and that's a misnomer. I don't use the term. I have an issue with that. But what the
I mean, my bad. It's not a pyramid, but go ahead.
oh no, I'm saying those pyramids, those the mini pyramids, those came later. Those plentiful pyramids that you see in what's called Nubia or Northern Sudan today are much later. All right, that's one, and people don't realize that. They say, "Oh, it's more pyramids in Nubia than it is in Egypt." Like, okay, duh. All right, it came later though. You know what I'm saying? That's one thing. But to answer your question about the language, no, the Meroitic script and everything is not a full it's not fully developed and known as of date. But yes, there are people working on it. So yes, so no to is it? But yes, it's a project. But let me explain something about Nubia and Egypt. Here's where the trick is, and we got to be careful. And I did a whole video on this, but I just summarize right now real quick. Egypt, or what people are calling Nubia, there's no such thing. The region was called Ta-Nehisi or Ta-Nehisu, and that's the whole region. Within that region, you have multiple communities that were named by name. You had the Magi, you have the Wawet people, and so on. It's a whole list, right? And they lived in this region, and what people are trying to describe as Nubians, and when they say, Nubia is the mother or grandmother, Ethiopia, Nubia is the grandmother of Egypt and stuff like that. Egypt had two prominent cities called Nubit or Nubt, which means gold. And these were gold towns. And it was two. And you can find them today under the names of Ombos and Kom Ombo. And the archaeological name of one of those sites is Nakada. So when you talk about pre-dynastic Egyptians or pre-dynastic people in Egypt, in these archaeological sites of Nakada 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth, these are the people that they say would bring in or usher in, these cultural elements, cultural items, towards the origin of this type of culture that we could see and everything. But they happen to be in a place that was called Nub. They would be your Nubians, but guess what? That's not the place that people think they're talking about. That's actually in Egypt. So your original Nubians are Egyptians. They're not south of Egypt. See, so let me explain another part. What happened is scholars, early Egyptologists, everybody that lived south of Egypt proper was called Negroes in the scholarly works. And when the word Negro became politically incorrect to use, they changed the word Negro or blacks, Negroes, to the word Nubian. That's where the switcheroo happened. And so everybody living south of Egypt was called Nubians because they replaced the word Negroes. Because in their minds, they thought that Egypt was created by West Asians or Europeans. And everybody south of Egypt, that's where you get the primitive black Africans. And so they call everybody down there Negroes. And then they changed it to Nubians. But the real Nubians by name are people who lived in Egypt the whole time, from pre-dynastic times, living in the two major towns, Nubit. So that's why I have an issue with Nubia. There's no such thing. There's two Nubias, and they're both in Egypt. Even to this very day, both cities will still be within the borders of Egypt to this very day. But when you say Nubia today, people think you're talking about North Sudan. And that's wrong. So switcheroo. So we've been bamboozled. So all of that talk about Nubia and Kush and Egypt, and when people talk about that and try to compare all that stuff, man, they're lost. They're swimming in the ocean. They're swimming in the ocean.
I know, because they were talking about that border stele, or where Ramsey got that statue or something at the end. It was showing, they were saying that was their border, telling the Nubia or Tallahassee to stay out. So that's a myth right there, right?
No. They did have border stones that marked the territory at the first cataract. And that's what I'm saying. That marked the difference between Ta-Nehisi and Ta-Seti. You gotta remember, Egypt Egypt, when we say the word Tawi, two lands, we people tend to translate it as Ta as land, but it also means a region or a realm. And so the two lands, what were the two lands? Why did they call it two lands? Like, why don't we live in America? Why don't we say two lands here? But the reason,
Okay, I was thinking they were talking about the delta, but between the delta and a little bit lower Egypt or whatever you call it.
no, you're right. That's what I'm getting at. So they saw the kingdom of Egypt as two separate lands because it was two separate environments. It was the valley and it was the delta. So Tawi is the two regions, the valley, Tashama'u, and the delta, Tamehu. So you have Tamehu, Tashama'u, then you have Ta Nehisi and Ta Seti. Those are the four major Tas, or land, or regions, or realms that the Egyptians conceptualized. And then on the left and right, that's like going up, down, coming from the Mediterranean, working your way down. But on the left and right, they had the inner and outer. They had Kemet, which is the riparian zone, which is all the land that had access to water. Therefore, it was plush and fertile and green, and food could grow there. Then outside of that was the Desheret, the dry land, and then ringing outside of that was the mountains, the hills.
Okay, I got you. So yeah, I'm a most definitely join your class, man. And so when you talking about the language, so I can get a figurative speech on it. Let me give a comparison of I'm thinking what you're talking about.
Okay.
Let's say, like if we we want to have a children's story, we trying to teach them morals and stuff like that. I'm gonna use Rudolph and the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Right?
Okay.
Rudolph doesn't have a shiny nose or nothing like that, but if you pay attention to the myths within the story, it's actually true because it's saying, hey, the least of you can be the better, or you could be just like everybody else. So I understand they putting the myths behind the story. There's not a Santa Claus, it's not a reindeer, but if you understand the story in between it, then I can understand where they're getting the truth out of it. You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's a form. Yeah, that's a form of a literary device and rhetoric and literature too. Yeah, that's not it. Yeah, there's different kinds, and what you describe is one. That's a bigger chunk or broader type when you're talking about a whole story, being a figurative item versus a statement. I can say one statement. Like I could say, man, the shoes you got on, man, those shoes are hot. That's a metaphor. That's when a metaphor is when you compare two things with any to be verb, is, am, are, was, or were. Those shoes are hot, or those shoes are fire. When I say that, and we hear people say that all the time, oh, those shoes are fire. That's a metaphor. They're not literally fire. So what do we mean by fire? Fire is a word that we're using to cover or veil a real word or concept that we really mean. You see? That's an example of figurative. That's a explicit figurative expression. But then you have implicit ones, and then the bigger ones that become a narrative we call myths and mythos and stuff like that. And that's what we're dealing with a lot with the Egyptian text. The Egyptian text is inundated with figurative language. And I talked about one earlier about the egg, and we're going to go over some more Monday. Because people want to play and pretend. On one hand, they want to big up the Egyptians, say, hey, they're so smart, they built the pyramids, they did this, that, and the third. But then on the other hand, people have implied that the Egyptians are just some random knuckleheads that's spooky, that believe in amalgamated animals that's going to eat them up in this thing called the afterlife and stuff. Just because people do that today take figurative things literally doesn't mean that people did it all throughout in every culture. Now there is superstition that exists in every culture, even to this day. You got people who believe that black cats are bad luck. Nobody want to open an umbrella indoors. Nobody want to walk under a ladder. Don't want to split the pole. The number 13, there's no buildings don't have a floor that's number 13, even though they do have a 13th floor, which is crazy. They just don't want to see a 1 and 3 put together for that floor. What they gonna do? Build a blank floor? Like really, literally? But the 13th floor is different from the number 13. So the actual 13th floor is labeled 14. That's crazy. But so we have superstition that exists. It's just that our endeavor to be scientific removes those superstitions over time. And when a culture self-corrects that way, and that culture is interrupted, you're bound to get people who crystallize those superstitions and run with it, continue to run with it. And that's what happened all over Africa. Africa was disrupted by colonialism, the transatlantic slave trade, colonialism, and all that other kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, and you know that have you heard of that? What's that lady that Egyptologist, that white lady with the red hair? You know what I'm talking about?
No, not really. Nope.
Well, I was watching a series on that, and she was explaining the workers at the pyramids, and they wrote in shorthand instead of just writing in hieroglyphics. They would write down on a piece of stone or something.
Oh, I know you're talking about.
To relay messages.
Yeah, I know you're talking about. Yep.
And she was saying that they even practice voodoo then, where they would write a person's name on a object and then break it and say some stuff like that. Is she's being genuine? Do she understand the language like that?
Nah. It's easy to say that. They don't understand it. Same thing with magic. See, magic happens the same way. If what's his name, Chris Angel or David Blaine, if he was to do a trick in front of you, you don't know how he's doing it, but you can guess all you want to of how he did it and be 100% wrong every time because you don't know how it's done. And then on top of that, it's not real magic because he knows how to do it. You just don't. So you call it magic out of ignorance. So a lot of times we walk away with our conclusions, but they're swimming in ignorance because they don't know. And so that's what a lot of things go on. But over time, these figurative expressions become crystallized and become institutionalized and become belief systems where people actually believe it and create a practice out of it and a routine and stuff. And the Abrahamic traditions are a good example of that in the bigger scheme of things. Because no one, like, if you think about it this way. If, let's take God of the Bible, for example. There's 3 attributes that everybody who believes in the Bible will give God these attributes. The 3 omnis: omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent. That means he's all powerful, he's all knowing, and he's in all places, everywhere. Now, that's what most people will gladly give God these attributes. But then when you actually read the text, and the Bible is not a book, it's several books that just happens to be binded in a single bind, but it's several books. So if you take the books and you read them, you will not be able to match those attributes with the character that they're calling God in the book, because God hovers over water. How can he be everywhere and hover anywhere? You can't have that. God walks in the cool of the garden and walks in the garden in the cool of the day. How can God walk anywhere if he's everywhere? God came down to the tower to see what men have built and stuff like that. God came down and brokered a deal with Abraham. The serpent or Lucifer went up to go see God. Why would he have to go up anywhere? Why would he have to move anywhere if God is everywhere? You know what I'm saying? So that's the omnipresent is all out the water. Then omniscient, all knowing. Why would God ask any question? they'll say, well, the question is really not for him. It's for you to know. He's just testing you. Well, if God has to test anything, it means he don't know, because the purpose of testing anything is to know something that you don't know. Test is the word, to try and to experiment. You try something, test something, experiment something because you're trying to figure something out. So that knocks that out. So God's like, Adam and Eve, where are you? Who told you were naked? Why would God ask those questions? You see what I'm saying? So my point is that over time, the original intent of these literature, these literary devices, and how they were recorded and saved to be passed through generations, they lose the legend or the key that helped uncode or decode the realities behind it.
Right. And I had a question for Kofi. I know he knows a lot about West Africa. Why we didn't have a script or a writing system before the Arabs came in, or am I mistaken? Anybody can answer that question for me.
I don't know if he's in here or he was in the car last time. See. Oh yeah, he may be having trouble.
Yeah, I was just wondering. I mean, because I take everything with a human factor in it. Like, I know before we started writing, we had language, we had sign language, you had these all type of languages, but that's really genius to me to be able. And I understand through trading and just to get all this information in, to pass it down through generations, so you don't have to repeat it all over again. I was trying to wonder, why didn't West Africa or South Africa even get that model before someone else came in and put their interpretation? That's why it's making us. I think that's why people don't want to be from West Africa or whatever. They're making it seem like we didn't have anything, we didn't really do anything, we didn't write anything down, we didn't do anything like that. And I think that's why people are more embarrassed more than anything. Am I kind of correct on that?
Well, I'll say
that the Europeans,
but
I mean, a lot of people didn't have writing. A lot of people got writing from people out of the Middle East, because of their proximity.
Your phone breaking now.
Yeah,
isn't Arabic sort of I know it looks really close to one of the later scripts from the Medew. Like, is it diacritic, or I'm not sure, hieratic, or I don't know. One of the later cursive Medew looking scripts is it looks really close to Arabic. I'm not sure if it has a direct connection or it just looks like that. But I remember you speaking about it before.
Yeah, demotic. It looks like
demotic.
That. Yeah, it looks like that. Where they get their shapes and stuff from is maybe different. But a lot of those, the proto-Sinaitic script really produce. It goes out and branches out into the alphabets and things. Yeah, but we talk about that. That's a whole long thing. Somebody said something. I was gonna say something and I lost my. I thought it was asking, is he close with writing? I wanted to say, just in writing in general, you have to look at why. Like, we know that, okay, the Egyptians came up with their writing system, but people kind of stop there and don't ask, well, why? Why did they why at that moment did they choose to do it? And so if you go into the history, the earliest attestations of it and stuff, you'll find that it was related to commerce, cataloging, logging, saving data. And so today you would be hard pressed to find somebody to describe writing as a technology, because it's just so common today. But writing was a game changer. Writing back then was big as like the invention of, even bigger than like how the internet affects us today. And so they had a need for it, just like we had a need for the internet. Like, innovation comes out of necessity. Like, beneficial innovation comes out of necessity. We don't do things just to do it. Today we do more of that, but in antiquity, nah. everything that was done was basically out of a need to solve a problem. And so the problem was to save data and log data. And so that was the need. So when you ask the question, West Africa, whatever, certain groups of people may not have come up to that point of having that need at a any given particular point in time. And so you have some cultures who believe writing is evil or a bad thing for human beings, because like how our maybe our great grandparents or grandparents looked at the calculator. There's people in America who looked at the calculator being allowed in schools as a detriment. They're like, oh, it's gonna make our minds lazy. We can't calculate the numbers in our mind, and now we're gonna rely and depend on the calculator. Well, you got people who looked at writing the same way. Like, no, we're not supposed to write and save information. You're supposed to save it in your mind and be able to spit it out and orally. So you got all that stuff going on. So in some, I guess what I'm saying, in some circles, writing was seen as a problem, detriment.
Yeah, so that was like the first recording mechanism.
Exactly. It was the first jump drive. hard disk writing itself. You could save data without committing it to memory, pick it up and reread it. And it was that's amazing. See, we take it for granted, but it's amazing. Okay, listen, y'all. This will be the last thing because it's almost 3:00 in the morning. But think about this.
Okay, before that, I do have a question though.
Okay, let me say this, and you can ask your question. But let me say this. Imagine every word that ever comes out of your mouth, you're never ever going to hear it or see it again. Ever. Imagine every event and action that you do, you're never going to see it ever again. See, today we can't even conceive that, because everything we do can be saved and seen again, heard again. Because we have writing, we got pictures, we got cameras, recording devices, all these kinds of things today. But imagine living in a world where you got one chance to do something and you're never going to be able to re-experience it ever again. Ever. Except in your mind. That's it. And so that's a different way of living. Like, if you live like that, it's different. So you do things out of necessity. Everything is fleeting. Like, everything is temporary. Every single thing is temporary. Now we save stuff. Now we save goods. Like I bet you if you go over your parents' house right now, in the garage or in the basement, they got stuff that they never even use. They just hoarding stuff. They just keeping stuff for like 20 years. It's still stuck in the basement somewhere. Man, humans of antiquity never did stuff like that. Everything was fleeting. Everything was temporary. But when writing was invented, it changed the game. Everything can be saved. They can relive something. Now you have, before writing, you had people who would tell stories and retell stories over and over again. And that's why they had to invent myths, because they had to store the information orally in what we call today mythos, to be able to retell it. But now you can write it. Man, that frees you up from doing a bunch of other things. But anyway, we'll go ahead. Kadeem.
Yeah, the question I had was kind of like an etymology question.
Okay.
I don't know if somebody in the class asked this before, but pertaining to what you said about in many words for death, and you said a certain word was Medew.
Oh, you breaking up. I heard you say death. That's all I heard. Say it again.
Yeah, you said it was for the many words that mean death. You were speaking on that. You said it was a certain word that meant was there's a word Medew or mu or something like that. But it kind of reminded me of the word in Spanish muerte in Spanish, and I was kind of like wondering, like, for people that trying to find the translation of Ronnie Kemet, are they trying to find that that Egypt had more of an influence as like the Latin language for like modern work? I mean, for modern languages like Spanish, English, and French.
Yeah, that's interesting. Eventually, but you could find that in borrowing, any context that were made, and stuff like that. But as far as a direct influence in contemporary times, no. But it could have developed. And a lot of times when you look up etymology of words, and when you see at the bottom of etymology, it'll say unknown. Like they'll say, okay, this word comes from Old English, Middle English, which comes from Old English, this, which comes from French, which comes from the Latin, this, and then they'll say ultimate origin unknown or something. Most of the time, when you see that, they have an African origin. They have some kind of connection with an African origin. But what's interesting is that even the word Moor, like for Moors, people who Moorish Americans, they say the word Moor. There's a word Moor that deals with death in Egypt, and then there's a word Moor in English that's used for death, like mortgage. The word mortgage, the word mortuary, like that's where we get mortuary, mortgage, and all that kind of stuff that deals with death. And then there's a Egyptian word, mer, which means death, or it actually means like tying a rope, like a mooring post, which is tying the rope, which means that you are fastening your life journey, your ship, to its final destination. It means you're dead, you died.
Mortality. Yeah.
And then you have immortality, and then you have mortality. Exactly. So those are interesting things, but nobody would ever believe that some English-speaking folks existed back there in ancient Egypt to be influenced directly. You understand? That's one reason I brought that up, is that you do have these situations like that, but it's not a direct influence.
And the pyramid is a mirror, right?
Yeah, mir.
Okay.
Well, it's actually mer. The vowel is not there, so it's mr as well. And the mer is supposed to be a tomb, a place where you die, a place of death. So
I know you got to go, so I want to quickly say this. Another important reason to learn the script, how to read it, here in D.C., I don't know if you know, I'm pretty sure you know Anthony Browder is. He's excavating like a 25th dynasty, Karakamun, I believe.
Yep.
And I go to he has like Wisdom Wednesdays all the time. So I go there, and a lot of people.
Where that's at?
Oh, that's it. It's called the Thurgood Marshall. I think it's 12th Street or 9th Street. If you just look up Wisdom Wednesdays on ikg.org, you'll find it. But it's it's Wisdom Wednesday. He's been doing it for years. But just real quick, like he's looking up and he found stuff, and I'm not sure if he actually knows how to correctly read it. A lot of people know how to identify with just like the monoliterals, but then after that, they just kind of get stuck, or they might not even know what to refer to because that's just not their expertise. So I just see a void, and I'm like, man, I want it to go, but if I go, I don't just want to be digging. I want to actually be able to be of some use and point out like, yo, like this says this, or it says that, so that people don't keep trying to further mislead like that, or just misinterpret. Like, just following what's been going on for a long time. So I wanted to accurately be able to do it instead of just finding stuff and being like, oh, that's nice looking, and then that's it, So it's definitely a need.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought him up because when this is like years ago. This was like 2020 now. Maybe in 2014 or even probably back in 2012. When his early stages of doing that, he had sent us, me, the brother Sanjeti, and Asar Motep pictures. So we were the first ones on this side of the ocean to see pictures of certain walls that they were excavating to clean. And so we transliterated it for him and sent them back to him.
Dang.
to be able to translate it. And we found that in the tomb, there were copies of portions of the pyramid text in there. We were able to point that out to him. So yes, I say that to say that yes, you're 1,000% right. That we, knowing the language, you're able to do those kinds of things. If you go on excavations, that's why when people say, they ask me, have I been to Egypt? I've never been to Egypt before, but sometimes people ask me that as a way to say, because I have not gone, that maybe I don't know something. And that's real silly, because there's thousands and thousands of people who go like every year and can't read anything at all. So you don't have to go to be able to read. And like we were talking about before, they're coming up with 3D virtual tours of all these different places. They're not going to do too many, because then it's going to take away the touring and the money. But out of the ones they did do, you can see everything. You can read everything. They're doing museums the same way even here. That's what June was sharing earlier, the Met Museum. And so now I have networked with people. Like I have made acquaintance with people who speak German. So when I need some help with German, I have some go-to people. French the same way. And then I have some people that I know who live in Egypt. And so if I ever need a picture of something specific, I can let them know, get them a heads up, and then they'll do their best to try to get it to me. So over the years, I've been using my connections and networking like that, and I was able to get certain things, like even the when I did the Dendera, the light bulb thing. People saying that, the Egyptians had light bulbs and electricity and stuff like that. That's real crisp, clear pictures of that stuff. So I was able to translate it and everything. So we learning the language, you're able to kind of stretch out a little bit and add more to it, like you said, instead of just being awed by just what you're looking at. Oh, it's nice, and a photo op, But listen, it's 3:00, y'all.
I'm gonna let you go, Wu, and I appreciate you, man. And I do want to say though, I do disagree that when King Tut and all them folks buried they stuff in them tombs, they did think that they was either coming back for them items, or them items was gonna be with them in the afterlife. Not the specific item, but I think in their mind, like you say, the sister of sleep, death, sleep is the sister of death. I'm thinking that they replaying that all back in their mind, the way you described it to me the other day. But I do think they were taking that. They thinking it would go with them, or they coming back to recreation. I don't know, but that's what I believe, man.
Okay, now check. I got one question before you leave. Then, you are aware that the tombs in ancient times were raided and robbed?
I know what you're going to say, like those people know. I know. I just buried my dad a week ago, and I put one of my favorite items in his casket, my item, just to put him to remember me by. So I know I already know what you're about to say, but I think they think they were going to come back, or they bringing it back. They just going to recreate. I know they can't bring the chairs, the gold, and everything back with them, but still, come on now.
Okay, well let me get the whole question out then. So if you are an ancient Egyptian criminal and you risk your life by breaking in a tomb, number one, in order for you to be inspired to do that in the first place, you have to believe that the items and the dead person is still there. Like they ain't going nowhere, because you're going to risk your life breaking in a royal tomb at that. So that's there. And then when you do break into it, voila, you see all the treasure still there. You start stealing it. You start even stealing the jewelry off the deceased person's body that's still laying there. So what does that tell you? One, before you broke in there, you don't believe that they went anywhere. You think the things are still there. That's why you broke in the first place. And then once you get in there, you're stealing the stuff, and you're confirmed that you still see the body there and you still see the items there because you're stealing it. And if you get caught, the whole neighborhood knows that the body was there, the items were still there. That's why they could punish you with death, because you caught red-handed with the stuff. How you get the stuff if it's not there? So that criminal right there, he's not gonna believe that those things go anywhere, go to any spooky place or whatever. Why? because he broke in there, he saw him, he got him in the first place. And then the rumor spread. People know that, yo, those things are there. That's 1, 2, and 3. 4, for them to bury the way they buried, deep into the mountains, deep into the hills, and lock the tombs up and then guard them. They know good and well that those things are still in there and was going to remain in there. They didn't think that those things were going to go anywhere, go like the king was literally going to go up to some star and some sky and stuff like that. Nah, that's not happening.
I mean, but what you was explaining about the dream world, when you were talking about when you go to sleep and you're into your subconscious, sometimes the dreams come back, and when you wake up, you don't forget those type of dreams, even though you're in your subconscious mind. So maybe when in death, they was thinking, hey, I'm going back to the field, I'm going back to royalty, I'm going back to that. Maybe the commoner thought he was going to be planting, this is what they do every day in life. So he's thinking in his sleep that this is what they're going to do. Are you seeing what I'm saying? They're not taking it literally, but in their sleep, that's what they're doing.
Okay, as long as you say they ain't taking it literally, I'm okay with you. We good. we good. Long as you don't say literally, we good. We good. Okay. But let me say this. I'll leave you with this. Everything you experience takes place in your mind. Whether you're awake or not, and like you ask yourself, while you're dreaming, right? While you're dreaming, do you know that you're dreaming, or does it seem real at that moment? At those moments. But I don't want to answer because we definitely got to get off here. It's 3:00. So I listen. I appreciate it. Y'all tuned in and everything, man. So look out for Monday. We're gonna go live, and we're just gonna slow the conversation down around figurative speech and everything. All right, so we're gonna kind of slow that down and talk about it and go over some text to show you, even in the language, you have instances of metaphors and simile. And then we'll be able to kind of discuss that and compare it to these so-called funerary texts where people want to jump and say, okay, hey, they must have believed it literally, but have no basis for it, because why would you cherry pick and say, okay, they believe that literally, but then over here, okay, I don't think they believe that literally. What would this person use to make that differentiation? Is it because you take it literally and you don't know what it is that you want to project that on them? So we're gonna explore that. So all right, I'm gonna say Shem Hotep to everybody, man, and enjoy your night. And we'll probably do something even tomorrow. We'll have to see. But I'll talk to y'all.
All right, peace, y'all, man.
Peace.
All right,
peace, everybody.
Peace.
Peace.